Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the sunshine in the Ardennes at the second stop on our European Grand Tour for Peter Auto and the Classic Series for 2025. Literally, today is a new day from yesterday, and for the moment at least, we're enjoying a slightly better view of the La Source hairpin and the surrounding forestry of the Ardennes. Look, you can't have it this green without having a drop of rain or two. We had more than that yesterday. It resulted in one of the races being cut extra short because there was too much standing water on the track for the prototype cars. The good news is that whilst it is not totally dry today, there is no rain falling. Wherever you're watching from around the world, on the Peter Auto YouTube channel, or perhaps for the first time this weekend, welcoming you from the Goodwood channel as well. It's a warm welcome, and more importantly, as I say, a dry welcome from Spa-Francorchamps circuit, from John Hindhaugh, Andrew Marriott, and from Bruce Jones. The last Bruce of this morning's early session drivers taking the opportunity to take their road cars. So many British plated cars taking the experience laps over the last couple of days. This has genuinely been an international audience that we've had here. The car parks are pretty much as interesting as what we've seen in the paddocks. What a great event that Patrick Peter and his team have put on.
Well, it is, and particularly the fact the car club runners get a chance to go out and lap this circuit, which just adds something special, and you can hear them fizzing and buzzing. That's the drivers, not the cars necessarily, when they've come off. But also just things like you go to that fantastic cafe on top of the roof of the Formula One pits. Brilliant, brilliant view, but just the number of languages being spoken by people who are standing around having a drink, having a meal. This is something very, very special, but also just talking. This is my first Peter Auto Classic event, and the hubbub, and every single driver talks about the family atmosphere here. Yeah. It is astonishing. And they're with kindred spirits. Whatever you like to drive or dream of driving, it's good. I'll tell you what's a dream at the moment is the fact we're starting to see a bit more clear sky than we saw after about 11 o'clock yesterday. Yeah. It was fine through Friday. Saturday turned a little wet just before the cars went out to go racing.
Andrew Marriott, of course, we've known Peter Auto for many years working on the Le Mans Classic. It is Le Mans Classic this year. We've got Dijon-Prenois before that, in fact, as well, which we'll be bringing to you live in sound and vision. We're kicking off our Super Sunday with the Classic Touring Challenge, touring cars from the early to mid 1960s. We've already seen an event this year at the Circuit de Catalunya, Barcelona, and this entry actually is substantially different from what we saw down on the southern coast of Spain earlier in the season.
John, substantially different and bigger, and lots of nice Mustangs we haven't seen before. Had a Mustang winning in Barcelona, the Swedish driver Bram Boltrup, who we had on the podium yesterday here, and we had a British second place at Barcelona with Mark Drain driving with Andrew Haddon. They're certainly a team to watch in their Lotus Cortina. These cars are best part over 50 years old, you know, the Lotus Cortinas. I had a Lotus Cortina when I was a kid. So it should be a good... I had a Mark II, not a Mark I. People tend to race the Mark Is. Yeah. This race last year was all about Alphas.
They dominated here.
Yeah, the Banks brothers, who also raced a Can-Am car, not back this year, but they headed up 5 Alphas, beautiful Julia Sprint GTAs. We have got some in the race, but personally, I'm putting my money on John Spears and Nigel Greensall, that pair who raced so many different things so successfully in their blue Mustang. Let's see how that gets on.
That is a pole position.
Yeah.
That is it. There are essentially 2 classes here.
Yeah.
And much as it would have been in period, it's for cars over 2 litres and under 2 litres. Still got 1 or 2 cars going out on their laps. A very lovely Manta 400 with the full works arch kit, although it's sporting Jimmy Johnson's number 48 on the side in NASCAR style numbers. I'm not sure whether
it's an Ultima.
Ever drove an Opel Manta, although of course that would have been General Motors back in the day, so he was a Chevy man. And Ultima going out, Alpine A110.
John, I go to an old guy's car pub deal once every Saturday, once a month on a Saturday, and regularly they have an Ultima. About every 4 months they have an Ultima day, and about 6 of the things there with their great big, well, they've got Ford engines in the back, a Mustang engine in the back, I think. And some come sort of liver it up in Golf colours, all sorts of things.
It will surprise nobody to know that Porsche are probably the most numerate in terms of cars in the car club.
Oh, yeah.
Quickly followed in terms of cars out on the track by Jaguars, and Jaguar XKs and XKRs have been very impressive around. You think of them as a big intercontinental cruiser, but they've been driven relatively spiritedly. The nice thing about the track laps here is everybody is very respectful.
Yeah.
You do wear helmets here, and you can push on a little bit, but if you want to take your time, you can do as well. A few years ago, I had the 968 out round here and had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was really impressed by how many TVRs were here. Well, not only from the UK, but we saw one from Luxembourg, we saw German ones, we saw French ones, we saw Belgian ones. Big outing. The TVR club really turned it on.
So there you go, Bruce. There's a challenge for you to get your Trevor up and running to bring down here next year.
Absolutely.
If we come back next year,
can I come with you rather than?
Well, no, I was going to say you've got to bring the Turner.
I'm not going that far in it.
Any car beginning with T, you'll have to have a Triumph.
Yeah.
There you go. Have to borrow
I'll bring it on a trailer.
That's not a bad idea, actually. I think that would get here. He's TR4A IRS.
Yeah.
As he tells me I have to keep saying.
So
what a fabulous day we've got today. As I say, starting off with the classic touring cars, the classic endurance racing grid 2, the endurance racing legends race 2 for the weekend. Now that's the GT cars as well. Then we'll have a short break for lunch. Historic touring cars, which were mighty last night, racing until after midnight, and it was 1:45 in the morning before the festivities were actually finished. Then the CER1 grid, and we'll finish off with a 45-minute race for the gentlemen at just after 5 o'clock tonight. All live for you, with no breaks or blocks wherever you are in the world. Some real highlights yesterday. I can't wait to see Group C again today. They were out in terrible conditions.
I was going to say you'd like to actually see them today, because the spray when they're out on the track. I was conducting one of the podium for the previous race, and the noise as they came down the hill, even on abated throttle, and the sheer amount of spray, you could actually feel it dumping on you on the podium, and that's on the first floor over the endurance pits.
What I found the most extraordinary thing about yesterday was so few incidents in these appalling conditions. We hardly had a bent panel.
Well, I mean, anybody who went off and tended to go off on their own, I don't think we saw, and the stewards of the meeting might, if you look at the incident reports, perhaps that might tell a slightly different story, but we certainly on camera did not see any comings together of panel bending intensity.
No.
It was, and considering the caliber of side-by-side racing that we had, and the intensity and the closeness of racing that we had under the conditions, Bruce, in which they had to race, that was extraordinary.
It really was, and I think it was the Porsche 2-litre Cup, wasn't it? The oil standards all the way from the point you're looking at, Les Coulmes, then down the drop to Bruxelles and to Speakers, but we had cars running wide, but nobody having anything untoward.
It also talks about the safety of this track. Now, of course, it's a full Grand Prix circuit, and there's a lot more runoff than there was in the old days. I mean, this was a dangerous place in the old days, and there was lots of things to hit, but they've made it so much safer, and all for the better.
They've changed it and changed it back in some areas where for example, down at Pouhon, there's still an awful lot of runoff, but they've taken some of that runoff, but there's still a car park of runoff out there for these type of cars. But there are places now where the gravel trap is a little closer to the track, including at Rivage Bruxelles, as they come down the hill to that long hairpin. Pick a line, any line, really round here. It is back to the inside, to the right-hand apex, and then that spits you out down the downhill section towards Speaker's Corner. That left-hander that is so difficult to get right. Now, there's very little runoff there. The guardrail on the right-hand side is pretty intimidating as you're picking up speed rather quickly. And then, of course, you charge downhill to the double gauche, the double left, Pouhon 1 and 2. And it seems as you get there, you're coming at ridiculous speed, and you turn in, and if you've got grip, you end up going round and go, oh no, I could have gone quicker there. Still a little bit of spray hanging in the air in various places, but the Cooper safety car with lights out. This is a formation lap for the this fabulous grid.
Yeah, lots of Mustangs in there, 3 or 4.
But a car stopped out there, and it is the Horst Baumann Alfa Giulia Sprint GTA from 1965. That is the number 10 car, and that has stopped at the Jackie Hicks corner, or Speaker's corner as we used to call it. No name it was called for a long time. I remember coming here on my very first visit with Paul Tarsi, and we came as spectators, and we climbed up the old tower to have a look, and that was on driver's left, of course, down the endurance start straight, the old Grand Prix start straight, and somehow we found our way into the commentary box, and their microphone was pressed into my eyes, and that was me for the rest of the afternoon. But you could see that corner from there. They disappeared up the Camel Straight, and that's where they came back into view, hence Speaker's corner.
The other thing here, people don't appreciate the huge elevation changes.
Yeah.
And
even from Stavelot up to Blanchimont.
Oh, the weather sits in different, sits in the valley, and that's why we just saw that misty shot on the bottom. Now it's nice and clear here.
It's like layering a caramel macchiato into a clear glass.
Yeah.
You obviously have so much time in your hand, John, but just what I really like
from Sunderland.
Just looking, exactly. Just looking at this field, you think, okay, we've got the Mustangs at the front, long straights here, so good for all the grunt. You've got the Lotus Cortinas in the under 2 litre class, you've got the Minis, you've got the Alphas, but what I love is you've got Michel Grossvilliers in his Corvette C1 from 1960.
Not sure how that's a saloon car.
No, indeed, but you could say the same about a Mustang, couldn't you?
You could.
It looks like we're coming to a start here. 23 cars have gone out onto the grid. The majority of them are sub 2 litre category cars. They'll show up in green on the timing screen if you want to follow along with the timing we have in the booth and the tracker as well. If you search Alcamel Peter Auto, you can take live timing there. There's also all of the grids and the timings from the sessions earlier in the weekend. But it's John Spears and Baz Janssen with James Thorpe and Bram Bontrup, behind all Ford Mustangs there as we wait for the red lights to go out to start the 1 hour race. This is a standard start, not behind the safety car. A good way to start off on Sunday. Red light still there. Hold your positions, gents. Now it goes to green, and immediately James Thorpe dives to the inside in the Hertz coloured car, the gold striped black machine down the inside, takes the lead. Actually, that's navy blue and gold, isn't it, that car? As they head through the first corner at La Source and dive down the hill, picking up speed quickly. A couple of the Alphas coming through there. Rory Jack, I noticed, picking up speed, and Guillaume Colnet also trying to pick their way through. They'll be trying to use the more nimble Alpha with the 1750 twin cam motor through Eau Rouge, now climbing up to Radillon for the first time. A brilliant sight this Sunday morning. One of the Lotus Cortinas there coming through. That's Ivan Petov-Ivanov as he comes through in that classic white with green stripe car. Good start to get them through the first corner, Andrew.
Yes, but bad start from John Spears in the blue car. Dropped to 4th place from pole, but now just taking 3rd place back and taking 2nd place back as they dive here right-handed and then head up the hill.
Through Les Combes for the first time, Bruce, and it's the notchback version of the Mustang that we're looking at here, the mid-1960s car with a 289 cubic inch engine. They are holding sway at the moment at the front of the field, Bruce.
As you'd expect. I mean, as long as they got it neat and tidy through Eau Rouge and Radillon, they could use the power all the way up the Kemmel Straight. And of course, there's no chance the Lotus Cortina on the fast bits is going to keep up, but it's the way the Alphas are coming through here, because they've been much better. We saw 1, 2, 3 of them go past the leading Lotus Cortina, and the 4th one is tucked in behind.
Down the hill is where the Alphas can commit. That's where they have to make hay. The first sector of the lap, which goes up to the breaking point of Les Combes, that's not their territory. This run now, down from Les Combes, all the way down to exiting Curve Paul Frere or Stavelot, that's where they're going to make their time, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. Bruce, Goodwood a couple of years ago, they had a Mustang-only race, you remember?
They did, in celebration.
About 24 of them came from nowhere. But
or you find quite a few that were in that field, because a lot of cars get sort of brought back out if there's a special event at Goodwood, and then you've got to use them, having created them.
Yeah,
but good to see.
We will have a Mustang, a contemporary Mustang Challenge race, non-championship, at Le Mans at the 24 Hours this year. I'm hearing somewhere over 30, 35 cars will be coming across with full performance for 2 races at Le Mans, one on Friday lunchtime, and yes, Friday lunchtime, and one on Saturday. We'll cover that for you in sound and vision. 91.2 FM for the radio at Le Mans again this year from test day onwards.
Just want to point out, great little performance. The lead Mini, it's down just outside the top 10, Romain Gardel. And he's again, you're talking about points on the circuit where something nimble can gain a bit of an advantage. But Romain is getting ahead of some cars that, in terms of natural pace, are quicker. But you know, Isigonis got that Mini right from the very outset. And once they took it racing, you know, it was just fun, but it was also remarkably good.
Little spin by Georges Rochietta in the number 3 Mini, the red car with the black roof. He has pointed it in the right direction. Probably actually just kept his foot down and pointed the front wheels roughly where he wanted to go, and it pulls you straight.
Upset he's not in his TVR, which he's raced a lot in this series in the past, as George. 4 Mustangs then, and now John Spears is really fighting back after that poor start. And he'll hand the car over to Nigel Greenswell, of course. But
that's the lighter blue car, the number 14, second across the line here. Then side by side for third with Bram Bontrup and Baz Janssen. Which one of those cars will prevail in the braking area to La Source? The red Mustang with the classic black bonnet.
Spears into the lead.
Well, he's got the pace, and I tell you what, just coming into the bus stop was a real twitch from James Thorpe, who did very well to get that straight again. I thought, is John Spears going to try and dive by into the bus stop? But, you know, he's been around the block, decided that wasn't a big enough gap. But again, a better exit onto the start-finish straight. But James Thorpe isn't finished with the Hurt Stripe car tucked in behind. But John Spears had the pace to qualify on pole position, and now he looks like he's going to pull away.
Yeah, he got a much better run through the right-hander as they go uphill from Eau Rouge, and a little bit of a sideways moment from that number 67 car that was leading at the end of the lap. And by the time they get onto the Camel through that little kink, all uphill here to Lecombe, and that Spears number 14 car is making its bid for freedom. So not sure what went on at the start there, but whatever it is, either John missed a gear or wasn't happy with something.
Well, I tell you what,
side by side. Sorry, Bruce, go ahead.
John. Just to say that when you had the head-on shot looking at the grid, John Spears' headlights suddenly dim. And then they came on fully bright. At that point, James Thorpe was coming through from third place, thank you very much, and took the lead up the inside to La Source. But now in front, John Spears is showing the sort of pace you'd expect from him. But for poor James Thorpe, we saw another twitch from him. That was between Eau Rouge and Radiant. And of course, you lose that momentum you're desperate to keep, and then it pays out cost you the whole way up that long straight.
And Bruce, you were right to point out the Alpha, I don't know what we would call them, the tribe of Alphas, the Alfa Romeo Giulia sprint challenge, if you will, coming through.
Frivolity, a fun pack.
Yes, like it. The top 4 are Mustangs, and then the next 3 cars are all those Alfa Giulia Sprint GTAs, the 1965 cars, led by Christian Albrecht with Rory Jack and Guillaume Collinet in third place of that coterie of Alphas, and they are the top sub-2 litre cars with those 1750 engines. Andrew?
When I started watching touring car races, it was all about Jaguars.
Yes.
3.4s. People like Graham Hill drove Grand Prix stars of the time drove them, and then suddenly somebody arrived with a Ford Galaxy, and it changed the whole game. And then the Mustangs came and so on, and Camaros. But back in those days, the British industry, of course, motor industry ruled.
Yeah.
And the Jaguar was the thing to have.
So tartan green Mini there, having a go at the back of, that's Mark Drain, that's Mini, that is Romain Gradel, with Simon Nobili in there as well, and Francois Rivas and his Alpha. But those Alfa Giulias in the darker red with a variety of the front panel colours to differentiate them, as they did in period on the team cars, Bruce.
No, always, and I love the fact that historic liveries, echo those. But again, it's looking at touring car racing that's got diversity in it. We've got the grunt of the Mustangs up, but this little pack, an Alfa Romeo, a Lotus Cortina, and a couple of Minis nipping this way, nipping that way, trying to find an advantage on the slower parts of the circuit. That's the diversity that I love about racing from the 60s.
That's a completely different style of the Alpha to Lotus Cortina. Yesterday we were talking about how computers design cars. These days they all start to look the same. But completely different lines. But
I would submit, Andrew, that to this day, even though Alpha is part of a huge conglomerate and has platform shares with a variety of other badged cars, you can still tell an Alpha in the car park, if only for the shield grille, and whether it's a new Junior that locked up there by the number 24 driver. That was the Cortina just coming through the final corner.
Yeah, that's Ivanov, who's had broken up the four-car hegemony of Alfa Romeo. He's in fourth in that pack, and Ehrlich is the Alfa Romeo who's dropped behind him. But a great little scrap, nip and tuck here and there.
And now the two minis are racing wheel to wheel as well, right behind that Alfa.
Still a little bit chilly this morning. Air temperature 13 Celsius. We got down to 8 or 9 at the very coldest yesterday afternoon, although bizarrely, as we went into the evening and the clouds dropped a bit, it warmed up again. But the track temperature is still cold. Highest we've seen with the track temperature was about 18 or 19. It's down at 14. Lowest we saw was single figures last night with the rain coming down. Didn't finish racing till just after midnight last night. A little bit of an earlier finish tonight. Nice to see a number of the drivers at our hotel yesterday, and one or two of the cars that were finished trailered up in the car park. Mustang on a trailer, I noticed last night. I don't know how they got that out of the car park this morning. They must have gone out the staff car park entrance. I noticed they'd moved on the concrete block. That was a fine piece of driving to get out of there. What's Alpha Mini Lotus Cortina?
What's happening in the front of the field, though? We saw John Spears take the lead at the start of the previous lap. He's 4.2 seconds a lap later, so he's pulling clear. That was quite clearly obvious. But James Thorpe has still got a battle on his hand, because Baz Janssen in the 204 Mustang, third in the run of 4 Mustangs in the front of the field, is only a second and a bit behind, and a second behind him is Abraham Bontrup. So they're going to have a good battle to the end. But, you know, John Spears, it's a 1 hour race. Bear in mind, we haven't even got through 10 minutes of it. Nigel Greensill will already be suited and booted in the pits, waiting to take over the lead Mustang.
Yeah, it's a good point you mentioned there, because the pit lane will open in just on 15.5 minutes time. So that's at 35 minutes to go. The pit lane will open.
And Bontrup was all a bit wide and up on the curbing there. No, cars twitching around.
Of all the cars in that quartet of Mustangs, James Thorpe is the one who seems to have the loosest setup, and that tail is starting to wag the dog a little bit. He's doing a fantastic job of keeping it as straight as he can, but it's costing him.
Is it just me, Bruce and Andrew, or is that... Well, always, yes. But is the back end of that car just sitting up possibly a little higher than the other cars around it? Certainly the lighter coloured car behind James Thorpe of Baz Janssen looks like it's just got the rake in the opposite direction. If anything, that's nose up rather than tail up, which I suppose is weight transfer onto the back wheels. Leading out in elegant isolation, and sadly one of the Alphas in the pit lane is the number 10 car. That's Horst Baumann's car.
Yeah, James Thorpe drives a lot of racing cars. He's on the management team at Goodwood, actually.
Big sideways
moment.
Baz Janssen.
But James is best known for racing the Lister Flatiron, which he's had a lot of success in. We won't go into that, it's not racing here this weekend, but lots of Listers are. But terrific battle between this pair, but Spears pulling away from the field. Just
interesting difference in lines into La Source from Janssen and Bontrup there. From James Thorpe and Baz Janssen there. I think either of them really got any major advantage or disadvantage. The 76 car in fourth position is the in third position, excuse me, and actually he's lost a place there, hasn't he? So that is Bram Bontrup, so beginning to spread out a little bit at the front of the field.
They do a lot of nice graphic things in this series, and what I like is the numbers on the rear. The numbers on the rear, so when going away shot, you can see the numbers of the cars. Not any other series does that.
No, it's a very nice touch, not just for us, but for people watching, on all the screens and watching around the circuit. And certainly been a lot of people here over the last 2 and a bit days. Haven't seen too many come in yet on the Sunday morning, but we got in nice and early just to sort of ramp up our enthusiasm and get to the production facility.
Yeah, but how about at 7:45 this morning, as we were coming through the town before you drop down to come in at the source. We're coming in at the last source end of things. The bakers were open, and there was a steady stream of people going in and out of there to get their fresh baked goods and possibly a little sandwich or something out of there. Beautiful sideways slide, perfectly held there by Baz Janssen in the 204, the cream coloured car. There was a moment when I thought he's not going to get that back, and I was entirely incorrect.
Yeah, down the hill into Bruxelles, he was just looking a little up the inside, and I think he just became distracted, started to brake too late, and he thought there's only one way I'm keeping this on the track, and that's hang the tail out. But he kept it at a fantastic angle, but that would have given hope to Abraham Bontrap, who's in the red and black Mustang in third in that line, in fourth overall, because he's had his sideways moments. We saw a lap ago, didn't we, up at Les Combes. He's starting to close in again. But just remember, James Thorpe is keeping it neat and tidy, but that was the first mistake we saw from Baz Janssen.
All of those cars are 1960, actually no, Janssen's is a 66, but I have noticed that the red and black car is distinctively different around the rear under tray area, not an under tray, but you know what I mean, the rear valance. And he's also got the drilled back window as well to get a bit of airflow through the car. But if you stuck underneath that red and black car, there's just a little difference there. They're not all identical in terms of their bodywork. Our leader ploughing his own furrow at the moment.
He is. John Spears is very, very quick indeed, and his line up the hill through the left-hand kink that is the famous Blanchimont corner, he puts it very, very close to the outside line of the circuit there. He certainly is confident, and you can see him steering it on the throttle very much at that point on the circuit.
Had somebody having a moment at the downhill hairpin at Rivage, Bruxelles. Again, we have this battle for second place coming into the bus stop. Possibly think the preferred line might be slightly towards the middle of the road there. Maybe a bit more grip. It was very, very wet yesterday. So even if this does dry out as we go through today, it is going to be a brand new green circuit again. Punching out of the final corner across the line, there's nothing in it. John Spears has done the fastest lap of the race with a 3:31. These two separated by 0.2 of a second, and Buffalo Gals round the outside for the second place car, which holds on to it. So a complete reversal of the lines they took last time around. Second place, James Thorpe, went to the more standard racing line. Now let's see who had the problem. That's an Alpha as well, isn't it? So that was actually coming down to Jackie Hicks' corner. And not sure.
Was it Christian Albrecht waiting to see? No, he's come through. Rory Jack has not come through yet, just waiting for him to complete the lap.
It was Horst Baumann again, I think, who had a little sideways moment.
He was our pit visitor, wasn't he? So he's reappraised the car and gone out. Well, I'm very glad it wasn't Jack, because he was trying to keep Christian Albrecht honest in the battle to be the top Alpha for 5th place. But
this is going to go all through the race, this, gents, isn't it, this one?
Still a little bit of spray coming off the tyres, but I think it is drying out. And indeed...
Have you taken the optimism pills this morning?
Well, yes, my colleague here...
I had one job. I'm always looking for the chink where the sunshine might come, but right now I'm enjoying this race as much as the drivers out there. I mean, what could be better? Spa-Francorchamps, and with a lot of power. We heard from James Thorpe yesterday talking about actually rain here is fabulous. It's a circuit that drains very well, but the battle for second place, I was about to say, is going to be sorted by a mistake, and James Thorpe is the driver in second place for now, but somehow still in second. He got it wrong into Bruxelles, went beyond the white line just with 2 of his wheels and came back across. But certainly Baz Janssen must be thinking, my moment is coming sometime. I've just got to get in close, keep harrying him. But James Thorpe, that was a good save. That was skin of his teeth.
Overtaking before the start line is a penalty for Michael Erich in the Alpha number 40. He's 8th in class. He'll get a penalty for that.
Yeah, well, he's 11th at the moment, and that'll vault Mark Drain past him. But then the 13th place guy, Rivaz, he's another 6 seconds behind, so just cost him 1 place there.
So that little battle to be the top Mini has been resolved recently in the driver who was second in the Mini train, Simon Nobili, up into 9th place there. Rory's got Mark Drain behind him, and then the Guardarel Mini, but they're still having a lot of fun, as is James Thorpe, but he's having to be so defensive now because Baz Janssen, I think, is a little bit quicker, but he cannot find a way by. But got plenty of time to do it. We've still got more than 40 minutes, more than 43 minutes.
And a pit stop, of course.
Of course.
The pit window opens in 8 minutes.
Only a handful of the drivers, about half a dozen, maybe 8, have got 2 drivers in this race. So a lot of the drivers, at least they'll know exactly what the track's like when they go back out after their pit stop.
So the sub-2 litre class, headed up in 5th overall by Christian Albrecht in the Alpha number 140. Rory Jack in the 33 is about 7.5 behind. And then in 3rd place, breaking up the Alfa Romeo trio in the same position. I just wonder how James Thorpe feels when he sees actually the whole side of a Mustang, Andrew, in his mirrors from Baz Janssen. He's on the left now, he's on the right. Oh no, he's right sideways across the back of me. Yeah, there'll be a big dive here if Janssen wants to come down the inside. Bram Bontrop just not able to get onto the tail, or maybe not willing to get onto the tail of this wee battle at the moment. Down the hill. You pick up speed so quickly here. I didn't see the race control messaged for everyone to put their lights on beforehand. I love these cars, you know, beautifully prepared. But of course, the Mustang of this era was effectively pillarless doors, so there's still a chrome strip across the top of the window glass. You can see that quite clearly on James Thorpe's car with those silver stripes in the sort of semi-Hertz. They were black and gold, the Hertz cars. Great stories of the Hertz GT5 at 350Hs, which were rented out on a Friday night. Somebody would take them to Riverside or one of the old American circuits, bolt the cage in at home on Friday night, race it on Friday and Saturday, and take the cage out on Sunday and take it back. Baz Janssen, this time outside line, too high there, and surely this time Janssen will get through, but he's lost traction coming off the apex. In American parlance, centre off, got loose, and he's lost that position again. Taking the high line for James Thorpe, Bruce, is paying off round there. I think the stewards may be looking at that if he keeps going all 4 wheels off the track.
Yeah, this time he was all 4 wheels. Last time he had his left hand 2 wheels off at Bruxelles. But again, a fantastic job. How he got enough traction to actually get back onto the circuit, keep Janssen behind him, anybody's guess.
Strangely, I think there must be more traction out there, because
I think that is high grip tarmac on the start of the runoff.
Yeah, I think
maybe that is it. It doesn't look like locked up mistake moment. It looks semi-deliberate, and that is the line that James Thorpe in that dark blue and silver number 67 is using.
But it has allowed Abraham Bontrop to nearly get onto their tail. So those 3 cars at the start of that were covered by 3 seconds. It's about a second between. James Thorpe hanging on in 2nd place as he's pushed as they go to Campus corner. Baz Janssen must be thinking, when? It's coming my way. But we've got a spinning Mustang, but not one of our lead quartet, and certainly not raced in on Spa. It'll be the best part of 10 seconds. He is now 10 seconds clear in the lead of the race. But the orange Mustang that went round was Phil Mulacek, and we had talked yesterday, Andrew, about the Mulacek family with everything Ford in their collection in the States.
I think they've got about 20 different Fords from GT40s. Search on the internet, you'll find them and see pictures of them standing in front of their collection.
At RSL_studio, if you want to say hello this morning, hello to Dave Rowbottom. Thank you very much indeed for your kind words. Watching and listening with Thomas Pitts also watching us this morning. Not sure what part of the world you're in, but this new initiative from Peter Auto, bringing you all of the action of their major track-based events this year. Le Mans Classic to come, but before that, in just a couple of weeks' time, Dijon-Prenois for another round of this championship. Outside, inside, Lecombe and La Source, and this time, 2nd place has been ceded to Baz Janssen by James Thorpe. Andrew, that's a classic Spa manoeuvre, getting the run out of the final corner.
Finally got it to work, and Boltrop was closed up, so we've got a trio of them now battling for 2nd place, and we see the Mustang 89 car go around. He'll sort that out.
That was earlier on. We saw the car recovering, didn't we? The milkshake car.
Interesting, the beautiful Mustang chrome badges they have, usually on the front of the grille.
Yep.
Lots of different positions, our cars. We've got one with no badge, one with it on the left, and one in the traditional middle position.
The Steve McQueen Bullet Mustang, the 67 1/4 car, that's popularised not having the galloping stallion on the front of the car. There's a couple of them that have got Shelby badges on them as well, I've noticed. There's talk even to today in the Mustang Challenge about whether that impedes the airflow to the radiator and back in period. But I noticed that John Spears has got the full-sized, full galloping Mustang on the front. He has, It's not slowing him down at all.
No, it isn't.
Listen to that little 1750 twin cam.
Terrific battle between this Lotus Cortina and the Alfa.
And a stick shift gearbox.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
With the beautiful wipers that come from the outside in, although for racing, of course, they've got the park positioners straight up to help the aerodynamics. Coming through traffic now for the leading cars.
Down into the mist. Again, we saw this on the formation.
I think it's just that camera.
Maybe it's just steamed up overnight. It's on the drop down to Pouhon, but because certainly by the time they get to the exit and approach Fagnes, it's clear. We have had a change in that sixth position, even off in the Ford Cortina. Lotus Cortina has just gone past Rory Jack's Alfa, so he's got one more Alfa to pick up off if he wants to get ahead of that. That's Christian Albrecht, who's running 5th overall.
Pit window is opening in about a minute.
So not this lap.
I think Spears will stay out a bit longer.
Why wouldn't you, Andrew? He's built up a 9.1 second gap now.
It's his car, he owns it. So stay out.
Are any of those leading drivers driving with the 14 who leads has got John Spears, got Nigel Greensole to come?
Yeah, the others are all solo.
Yeah, I thought so.
Which is, I think, in these conditions, a very big helping hand. Mind you, so is putting Nigel Greensole in your car to do the second part of the race.
It's not going to slow it down, is it?
No.
Right, one thing we do need to keep picking up in this, we haven't got 2 classes in this. Well, we have, but we've got an extra one as well, because there's a pre-62 class. But Michel Grosfillier should win that, because he's the only driver in that class in his C1 Chevrolet Corvette. But
he is literally in a class of his own there.
He is. Every lap he's in a class of his own. But what, it's nice and clear, over 2 litres, Ford Mustangs pulling away at the front of the field. And then in behind, it's the battles of the Alfa Romeos, the Lotus Cortinas, the Minis et al.
And there he is. Thank you to our director, clearly listening in.
And just been lapped.
He won't care about that. No. Having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Actually, that's Christian Dumoulin, he's racing with there in the Mustang number 20.
Sorry, my apologies.
No, it looks very similar to James Thorpe's car, actually. And as the spray clears, again, 2 big white stripes up
Isn't
over the
it
hood.
amazing to think in a few short years, the Corvette, that being the C1, would metamorphosize into the shape that is still fairly recognisable today, although of course the engine's gone into the middle of the car, which is where it was originally meant to be, but they didn't quite feel it was the right thing to do when the Corvette came out. Lee Iacocca and the rest of the team. I'm sorry, no, Lee Iacocca was
He was the Mustang man, yeah.
The original father of the Corvette played about with the idea of putting the engine in the middle, but that felt low-hanging, almost European-like car that the Corvette became with the C3s onwards.
Yeah, I mean, it was the element. You looked at American cars, and they were large, cumbersome beasts back then. I know, Andrew, you were talking about the Galaxy arriving in the British Saloon Car Championship, the size of a sort of oil tanker, but yet suddenly really nimble as to go with its power. Then the Falcons and the Mustangs came to play. Fairly interchangeable, weren't they, the Mustangs and the Falcons in terms of performance? You're going to say Ivan, gone the full name,
Zora Arkus Duntov.
Duntov, I was trying to remember.
Yeah. There was a mid-engine prototype called Azora. Harley Earl was really, I suppose, given the epithet of father of the Corvette, but Zora did a lot of the design work and gave us an American icon, a global car, much as the Mustang has been in the battles down through the years in those along with the Camaro when that came along, the pony car battles.
So,
stuff of legend.
Roccietta in the pits, they jacked it up and then dropped it down again. Now they're jacking it up again. So I don't think they've got a problem with maybe the exhaust system or something.
Andrew, I think this one actually came in before the pit window was open, and it's not.
Yes, it's definitely got a problem. Oh yeah, it's definitely got a problem.
That little red and black Mini down towards the tail of the field, clearly having come in early. So the lead Mini is still, in fact, it's changed back. Simon Nobili has just come into the pit, so it's going back to Romain Guaradelle in his, but that may chop and change. But certainly in terms of pace on the track, Simon was a little bit quicker to get the lead Mini.
And that Mark Drain's car is in, mechanic leaning into the car.
Yeah, another car that with just a single wiper, that's not a period feature. But I do like to see the chrome wiper arms. I find nothing more jarring than seeing black wiper arms. Not sure what's going on with the headlights. I presume that is so that they can identify the car when it comes into the pit lane.
What, one on, one off?
And also half blacked out.
Unusual to see a Lotus Cortina without a coloured stripe.
Very unusual.
Up the swage. Usually that sort of olive green, but other colours were available. But this one, Mark Drains, is simply cream all over.
Lovely.
Just to be different, I suppose.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Battle of the Mustangs continue.
Yeah. This is the battle for third place. James Thorpe for so long resisting Baz Janssen, but once Baz got in front, he just suddenly opened out. I thought he was a bit quicker. He's 5 seconds clear. But James Thorpe, we saw from early in the race, his car was looking very, very loose indeed when he got into the braking zones. But the fact that Baz Janssen is now disappearing from him as they go down through the kinks from La Source down the old start-finish straight.
And indeed, we caught it ducktailing its way out of that corner. It is a bit loose. Now that Mustang that spun is in the pits, and pits are getting very busy now.
Yeah, 6 minutes to go before the end of the pit stop window. I really like that colourway. That was a Ford Motor Company racing livery. The bright, almost fire engine gloss red with the gloss black bonnet, roof and boot lid. Quite a lot of people just had the actual hood itself, the opening part of the bonnet, sometimes painted matte black to help with the reflections in sunnier climes.
John, still one of the great moments of my childhood in the days of matte black bonnets was when my father was driving his company car and the windscreen was suddenly filled with the bonnet that flew back. So that had to be replaced. So for weeks we had a matte black bonnet.
Because it hadn't been painted to match the car.
I just thought the performance just went through the roof, frankly.
Probably another 10 or 15 brake that was worth.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. I had it happen in a Cortina GT. Bonnet came up. There must have been something fundamentally wrong with the bonnet catches because it happened to a lot of Cortinas.
Well, yes, ours was the German equivalent. It was a Taunus 20M 2.3 litre. Being a good schoolboy, I had a pocket full of rubber bands and string, as you would in the day, and so we secured the bonnet with that and then continued.
Look, it didn't break the windscreen because they've been laminated in those tires, so it did break the windscreen. But
my father then drove with his head through the sunroof.
Excellent.
Yeah.
As you do.
Yes.
I
suppose he's sort of 6'5" as well, is he?
No, he's not actually.
I do remember a number of people having that happen to them in the late 60s and early 70s, and that led to, as you think back now, and it sounds odd, but a big selling point of whatever car it was that I was reading the advert for was a secondary bonnet safety catch.
Yes, absolutely.
So that you had to put your fingers under, either had a double click or you had to put your finger underneath. Of course, if you had a bonnet that had an interior bonnet release, then you probably had the Super or the XL version of whatever family box you had bought.
Yeah, not the L for you.
No, absolutely.
Bonnet engineering, GXL,
absolutely.
you definitely would have had the bonnet pull.
One we haven't given a shout out to, just in the pits now, the rather unusual white and blue colour scheme of the Hager brothers from Switzerland, Multi and Daniel, and they have just changed drivers.
Yeah, that's another Alfa Giulia Sprinter, the 65 car. Again, just perfectly beautiful shape and proportions on that car. Not the wide-arched versions that you see in other classes. Just absolutely lovely.
John, we did used to see racing the Giulia with the 1300 engine.
Yes, yes.
And that raced against the Mini, so that was an interesting battle.
Well, that was, you know, you had several subclasses as the second place car of Baz Janssen. It's just put the fastest lap of the race in, actually, and it's closed in to 5 seconds on John Spears in the blue. Oh, in fact, there's
Spears.
Spears in the pits as well.
There's Nigel in the blue helmet with the hand-stuck stars around it.
That's Nigel Greensall. Now, this will not be a super quick Le Mans style pit stop. There is absolutely no necessity to do so. There is a standardised minimum pit time. And that looks like, you see, now you're going to say, Hindhaugh, you were wrong. That window has indeed, that door has got a frame around it, but it isn't. That is just on the glass, and that all drops down if you wind down. Now, that car has got plexiglass side windows, so that is going to be fixed, but it still has to have the trim on there to make the seal. And of course, something that I loved, not very secure in terms of car security, but the opening front quarter light.
The quarter light. I was just admiring that quarter light as you were talking about it.
It's a thing of beauty, isn't it?
Yeah, not all the Mustangs had it, but certainly.
And not all the racing cars do, because if you can put a single side glass in.
And John Spears had an open face helmet. I noticed Nigel's wearing his open face for this.
So 4 Mustangs at the front, 3 Mustangs at the front of the pit field in, and Ivan Ivanov in the pit lane as well came in as the leading sub-2 litre car ahead of Rory Jack. But that was because I'm pretty certain Christian Albrecht had come in earlier. Yes, he had. So keep an eye out for the number 140 Alpha coming back around. That car is the leader of the sub-2 litre category that has pitted. It's an all-red car, no accoutrement in terms of identifying on the front valance there, the bottom part of the front valance. I was saying about Alpha still retaining their distinctive style. I was having a close look at that new Battery Junior. It was going to be called something else, but it's not built in Italy, so it couldn't be named after an Italian town. Mia Fiori, of course, was one of the places that Fiat had their big factory and named a car after it. But the new Junior, you look at it, and even though I know that it's built on a Stellantis platform that is about 5 or 6 other cars, it is absolutely Alfa Romeo. And I've got to take, I had a little Giulietta Quadrifoglio edition for a while with a 1.9 diesel engine in it, actually, 6-speed manual. That was a super little car, and little family 5-door hatchback, but you never mistook it for anything else in the car park. And Alpha have held on to that.
They have, and I feel very sad by the demise of Lancia. Because you look in the 1960s and the 70s, it was, you know, what you had a choice of which stylish, small-engine Italian family sports car you could go to. And, you know, whether you were a fan of a Fulvia or a Giulia, you know, there was something there. And I loved that little bit of battling, and they were quintessentially Italian. And we have to accept that a lot of that has been lost. But you're quite right. An Alfa Romeo is still very much an Alfa.
I had almost back-to-back, actually, as fairly long-term test cars. A Mazda MX-5, which I ran over the winter, believe it or not, and it was fabulous. And then the Fiat 124 Spider, which was based on the same car, but with different bodywork. And there were 2 entirely different personalities of car. The little Fiat was almost like a smaller version of a Maserati or something like that, with the Fiat badge right on the top of the boot. People didn't know what it was. Huge luggage capacity, little 2-seater manual roof, no electrics on that, but you could put it up and down with one hand in about 5 seconds. It was brilliant. And the little Fiat was white with tan leather seating, and I really bonded with that car and thought again there, well, you know, I realise this is to a point badge engineering, but I like the fact that they've gone about things their own way, put a different engine in as to the Mazda, a little 1.4 turbocharged rather than the 1.8 or the 2-litre non-turbo in. And, you know, it had 148, 150 horsepower, which doesn't sound a lot nowadays. It was perfectly adequate.
That's very interesting, because I've got an MX-5.
I know you have.
And absolutely right. You can take the hood up and down with one hand.
One hand.
It's brilliantly designed, but I look at the Fiats and I think Yeah, they say it's the same car, but it's not.
Honestly, all right, sitting behind it, the dash is very similar, the buttons are the same. It drove completely differently, Andrew.
Yeah, I've never driven one, so that's very interesting.
Truss has had an Abarth version of one for a while, before he bought his XKR.
Oh.
And he had a lot of fun in that little Abarth. That was the 180 odd horsepower. Same engine, 1.4 turbo, just different stated tune. Now, here's two completely different philosophies of car, Andrew, battling together at Lecombe.
But Jansen hasn't been in, has he? And the window's closed.
Well, I thought he hadn't, but he's listed as having been.
One pit stop, yes.
See?
Left it very, very late. But
how can he be 10 seconds ahead of Breezy? They both made one stop.
Is there an extra driver lane because of the driver change?
Absolutely.
Nigel
putting a pro in.
That's it, yeah. Nigel would have been 20 seconds longer.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, so that puts Baz, who was in that eternal battle with James Thorpe until he got through into second place, but he suddenly gained about 5 seconds, was taking quite a chunk out of John Spears, so it shows how much he was being delayed while behind Thorpe. But again, if you suddenly are gifted 20 seconds, so Nigel Greensall is now 10 seconds behind him. That tallies pretty much, doesn't it?
Does it?
But the chase is on. How much time has Nigel got to give chase? 21.5 minutes. What can he do? We'll see over the next 2 laps. But Baz Jansen really settled into good pace in those final laps just before his pit stop.
Well, before Nigel got into the car, Baz Jansen's fast time and the number 14 Mustang's fast time were pretty much identical. 3:28.5 is the fastest lap of the race in the over 2 litre category. That is listed against Baz Jansen in the 2.04, the cream car. It's probably Wimbledon white or something like that, isn't it? It's probably called that. And then 3:28.727 for the Greensall car that John Spears was pedalling earlier on.
More like the oval white. I think it's more of a cricket
it
white.
Is actually, yes, a green tea white.
Yeah, albeit without the green knees.
Yeah.
The fielders.
Baz certainly knows his way around here. He's been a class winner in the Spa 6 hours in this Mustang in 2021, 2023. No, class winner in 23, not in 21, but he certainly knows his way. Jansen's a Scandinavian name, but he's definitely Belgian, and Baz is obviously Belgian. But he's doing a great job here, but Nigel's just taken 1 second out of him thus far, and how long have we got? 20 minutes. So I think Nigel will pull it back.
Bram Bontrup ahead of James Thorpe, the third and fourth, top 4 in the over 2 litre class, all Mustangs. Christian Albrecht after the pit stops now, but everybody is still ahead. It's Ed Morris who's taken over that number 24 Ford Cortina in second. Rory Jack still in third. So the Cortina is the blue oval meet in the Alfa Romeo Focaccia, with Andrew Haddon in another Ford Cortina now in 4th position, ahead of Romain Guadarel in the first of the minis. It's a couple of seconds ahead of Simon Nobili.
Andrew is racing with Mark in the Mark Train car now, isn't he? They often share, and they indeed were second in Barcelona. Jansen, Greensall, Bontrup, Thorpe. 4 Mustangs, what a sight here at Spa. And then Albrecht, who races all kinds of different cars, loving it there and leading the under 2 litre category. And we've got 3 Brits in a row.
That was Simon Nobili dispatching one of the Cortinas, not a battle for position there. I think that was Stefan Leperchois in the number 44 car as he went up the hill.
Certainly feel for some of the drivers to do multiple races in the Peter Auto Classic, because we've got 2 pit lanes here and you could finish in one and have to scurry.
Very good
Not
point.
inconsequential hill and up many flights of stairs to get to the top pit to get to your car to do the next race. So you have to hope that if you're running 2 or 3 races that they're separated by buffer races in between.
Simon Nobili and Malte Heger having a bit of a scrap there, but again not for position. Malte a lap down from the leaders as Nigel Greensall puts in the new fastest lap of the race, and a small matter of 2.2 seconds quicker than the previous best, and he's closed in within 7 seconds of Baz Jansen. 18 minutes to go. 18 minutes is 6 laps maybe, so that is going to be easy enough for Nigel Greensall to catch Baz Jansen. How will the traffic and the conditions play out? It is an old adage in motor racing and has been oft repeated. Catching is one thing, passing is another. However, this is a track, Bruce Jones, where there is room to pass. There's a lot of real estate to be able to take alternative lines.
John, it's not just the room, it's the fact that you've got corners that flow from one to another. So you can, if you can build your momentum, you've got more than a few chances in the lap to make it work. Then, of course, you throw in the mixture of slightly greasy track surface this morning, plus the fact they are doing a little bit of lapping here, but not many. We started with, I think we've still got all the cars on the field, 23 cars. No, one failed to start, which was Horst Baumann's Alfa Romeo Giulia. But no, you can work on a move for several corners in a row rather than relying on one corner per lap in which you're going to have to make your monster move.
Horst did get out in the number 10 car. We saw it having a couple of problems. So I think he did a couple of laps at the very least.
Actually, it says he's done 8 laps, but he's listed him on the screen as a non-starter.
Yeah. Nigel's really diving past the back markers now and closing up on Jansen, taking a second and a half a lap off him. I mean, Nigel's got all this experience of 30 years. I remember him years ago being very quick in the Boss Series, in the Tyrrell, I think, at one stage.
Yeah, no, indeed.
He's raced lots of single series.
Yeah.
He's probably raced more cars than almost any. We had Nick Padmore in here yesterday. He's raced a lot of cars. He doesn't come close to Nigel Greensall.
Boss, not the clothing company, stood for big open single
seaters. Absolutely. The series still continues, but not in the UK. And I covered a few of those races, and they were fun. But Nigel was definitely, he's an extraordinary guy, because he's busier than any other racing driver in the world.
His air miles tally must be fairly mighty. It's both sides of the pond and all across Europe.
An indication, Bruce, of the changing nature of classic and historic racing, in that the Boss series, the big open single-seater series, had everything, Formula 5000s, all of that in there, whereas nowadays you would probably have a category for each of those different cars, because there wasn't enough then, so they just threw them all in together.
It really was a melting pot.
Yeah, and they had a couple of Indy cars in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they had Formula 3000s and all sorts of stuff.
And then
it's all run by a guy called Roger Cowman, a super guy, actually.
Yeah, and so before that, you know, there's been a history, particularly in Europe, of, well, actually, also in places like Australia, where you don't have enough cars in one class, and you sort of mix them up. But you know, Formula One cars with bicycle wings over the wheels. When it sort of was the latter day Inter Series, which of course was the massive European sports car series in the 1960s. But it chopped and changed, but it means a lot of machinery doesn't die. It just goes and finds somewhere else to race.
In fairness, there was a history of that. Looking back at some of particularly the Mercedes-Benz would run as Grand Prix cars, and then with a light change of bodywork would run as not touring cars but sports cars. That was the word I was looking for.
In the 50s?
Yeah, back in the 50s.
And after that, the Malik U2, of course, did run in a Formula Junior form, and now Ray Mallock is winning front-engine Formula Junior with one of the special Formula Junior Mallocks, and very little different to the Clubman's cars.
Yeah.
I talked to him at
Signed by his father, Major Arthur Mallock.
Yeah, absolutely. A real character.
And Ray stepped back from RML, the company, so instrumental in touring car races. Was the first, in the modern era at least, was the first privateer team to win with the Super Tourer, one with the Cavalier, with David Leslie at the wheel, long before the big purse was put up by Alan Gow and Matt Neal, in fact, won that, who's here this weekend. That David Leslie, God rest his soul, I miss him dearly, particularly at this time of year when we're getting round to Le Mans. Used to love seeing him there working for the old Eurosport. David Leslie never really forgot that. He always thought he should have had that cash prize in the what was the Acuria Cos Super Tourer. That led to RML getting the works contract, of course.
Here we go then, Greensall closing in, and he's just going to breeze past Jansen.
I don't think Baz has got anything for him here.
He hasn't.
Baz is coming down through Pouhon 1 to the second part of the double left, the double gauche. Sits the car in the middle of the road, that's fine. He's not moving it around, he's not moving in reaction to the blue car. Behind him rides the red and yellow curbs, defensive into Fagna. And Nigel can bide his time here. He's got performance on his side. Sideways slide through the middle of Fania, down towards Campus now, and all traffic ahead as well. So is this an opportunity for Baz maybe to just delay the inevitable?
He's putting up a fight, though, isn't he?
He really is.
It's a Belgian. Yeah,
he really is.
I said he'd breeze past. Well, not exactly, but he'll be by. And before the end of the lap, I would
that
suggest.
number 14 blue car, Bruce, looks absolutely nailed to the ground compared to the other Mustangs.
It does, doesn't it?
I was just about to chip in and explain since the start of the race, and again at the corner where they're just going through now, Blanchimont, that was where John Spears looked so mighty, and that is precisely where Nigel Greensole has had a better exit from Campus, and he's gone through the next right-hander and he's got the momentum, but the car is the only one of the Mustangs in the top 4 that doesn't look loose. All the others, it's also down to driving style as well. Minimum steering input, but Nigel Greensole just following the wheel tracks of what John Spears did in the first part of the race. But Baz Janssen, as we saw in his battle with James Thorpe, loves to attack into the bus stop. No, not close enough this time, but he's not dropping away just yet.
The car's not even, it's not even four-wheel drifting, that car. It just looks like it's on rails. And it looks, I am sure it is not, and thank goodness for large, non-tinted windscreens. If we watch his steering inputs, watch his hands, not maybe at La Source, which obviously is it's a much quicker corner than people give it credit for. People think it's a hairpin, it's not, and it's slightly banked, and it's probably, in your average road car, it's probably a third gear corner rather than a second, and certainly not a first. But I just want to see him through the bottom of Eau Rouge. Watch the front wheels of this blue Mustang and the amount of correction that he puts in. There was none. He just turned in and the car followed it. That was absolutely superb.
Yeah, and when you're not having to adjust your steering when you're going into Radion, that means you're taking maximum momentum, and then again it pays out all the way up that climb to Decon.
Because every time, what Bruce is saying there, every time you put steering lock in, you are turning the front wheels away from the direction of movement and travel, and therefore you are creating drag. Even if you only put 1 or 2 degrees of steering lock input into it, your outside wheel's going to turn a little bit more than your inside wheel because of the Ackerman angle and the track rod ends, etc. And it's going to just slow you down. And half a mile an hour coming over the top of Radion's probably 3 or 4, Andrew, by the time you get to Le Combe.
Yeah, absolutely. When we get to La Source, a little Formula One story from the, well, I suppose early 70s. At La Source, remember the pits were down the hill, the Formula One
yes,
pits.
Of course.
In qualifying, I think it was Denny Holm worked out he could overshoot the hairpin, go down to the hairpin, go down to the cafe or hotel there, turn around and come down the hill with more speed than if he'd been around the hairpin.
Yes.
And of course then he broke the timing beam,
yeah,
and they did a complete lap. And of course they cottoned onto it pretty quickly and put some cones and stuff there to stop it, but it was quite amusing when he first did it. So that's, I mean, a wonderful corner, and a great place for photography.
It used to be the same at the final corner at Croft, which is where I did my first ever motor race in the Fiesta Challenge back in 96, I think, or 97, supporting British Touring Car Race. And if you missed your braking for the last hairpin before you came onto the start-finish straight, you could go into the runoff there. So instead of puttering around the final corner in first gear, you got yourself pointed in the right direction, and you were already shifting up to third by the time you exited where you were. You arrived at Clairvaux a bit quicker than you normally would have been, so you had to adjust your braking point a little bit at the pit exit.
Same theory. They also used the trick in the Buenos Aires Autodrome.
Yeah. Well, look, racing drivers are very, very clever people, and they are making decisions at a level that's... somebody said to me, their brains are clocked at a different speed, to use computer chip technology, and that's actually a really good analogy. And they see things differently, they see opportunities differently, and their ability to spot something where they can take an advantage, and that is their job. And it's up to the stewards to make sure that they clamp down on that early on. One of the best race directors that I've ever worked with is the man who's now back in charge, thank goodness, at the FIA World Endurance Championship in Le Mans. That's Eduardo Freitas, yes, the Portuguese. And he still comes and does club races as well at various parts, including in the UK. And he sets his stall out in first practice, and he lets everybody know what they're going to get penalised for. And that is absolutely the way to do it, Bruce, because there's no point by the time you get to lap 26 of a 28-lap race if they then ping somebody for something that they've been getting away with for 3 days.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Eduardo Freitas has been just a magnificent boost to global motorsport.
Totally great.
He's incredibly clear. He's unbelievably fair, but it's the communication he has from the outset. There are no grey areas with Eduardo. Lovely man as well, but you know, regardless of whether he's nice to have a cup of coffee with or not, he is just bang on the money in terms of.
He is nice to have a cup of coffee with. Of course, he always has the best coffee in the office. So in the paddock, he travels with the FIA WEC. He makes them travel a proper coffee machine, and a supply of coffee magically turns up, whether you're in Japan or Qatar or anywhere around the world. And I learned early on that I probably wasn't going to get a telling off if I'd been asked to go and see Eduardo in his office. The first time it happened was when I was in Fuji, actually, and I was slightly worried that I'd been summoned to Eduardo's office. He actually wanted to talk about the Code 60 procedures that Creventic were using and how that worked and how that might be incorporated. It was in the aftermath of Alan Simonson's untimely death at Le Mans, and he was running through the action plan after that, and it led to slow zones and full course yellows and things like that.
He sees the bigger picture,
and he doesn't mind whether it's not. He does not have "not invented here" syndrome. If it's good for the sport and if it's safe, he always says to me, "John, look, whatever decision I make," with that fabulous voice of his. That sonorous voice, safety first. It's safety first. Everything else comes second. I have to make a decision based on safety, and I will. And the drivers respect him for that.
Yeah, but you know, it's not a case of black and white. He understands there are shades of grey, but he makes it clear, because it's when I say shades of grey, it's not just polar opposites. He's thought it through, and then he'll communicate incredibly clearly. Right, one thing that's incredibly clear is this race is being dominated now by Nigel Greensill. Having got past Baz Janssen, he's the best part of 5 seconds clear. But as we've seen so far in this race, both the starting driver, John Spears, and then Nigel Greensill have got the number 14 Mustang set up very, very nicely indeed. In the under 2 litre class, Ed Morris has gone incredibly well since taking over the Lotus Cortina from Ivan Peter Ivanov, and he's now stretched his margin to 14-15 seconds over Christian Albrecht in the best of the Alfa Romeos. That's 5th and 6th overall, but they're heading towards the under 2 litre podium. 3rd in that class is Rory Jack, who's had a good, solid race, but he's about 20 seconds down in the battle of the Alphas in 6th place overall. Lapping still going on for Nigel Greensill with just 5 minutes remaining in the race. No need for him to take any risks in the lead Mustangs, and Alfa Julia Sprint GTA just in front of him, car number 40 going across the start-finish line, but he picks that off, and that's the Ehrlich car, and picks it off easily. Again, the power, John, of that 289 Mustang, certainly rather more than you'd get under the bonnet of the little Julia. 1750 versus 4.7 litres.
Let me point out, however, that look at that blue Mustang as it plummets down the hill, picking up speed all the way. I love, by the way, that they've used the area where the old Mustang badge at the back would have been for the high-intensity rain light, which they wouldn't have had in period, of course. But look at that car. That looks like it's just rolled off the truck. That has been that blue paintwork with a slight ding in the left front wing, just behind the headlight. But other than that, that car looks like it's just rolled off the truck. That must have been polished within an inch of its life. It's been out on a dirty racetrack behind cars, and the water is just beading away from that paintwork.
Yeah, no, remarkable. But actually, we were commenting last night. Basically, the rain started as drizzle about 11 o'clock. And by the time we had that last race, the Heritage Touring Car Cup, we were looking at the cars. They looked remarkably clean. But as I think Andrew pointed out, all the dirt had already been washed off the circuit by the previous downpour.
Sure enough.
So it was pure Ardennes water hitting the flanks of these cars. And this morning, of course, we got a greasy track. But there was a bit of light drizzle when we left the hotel at sort of 7 blah blah this morning. But right at this point in the race, and from the outset, the John Spears and now Nigel Greensill driven number 14 Mustang is in a class of its own. And again, driven to the edge of the circuit, not beyond, and that's always the key.
Yeah, and driving on a track that's already seen a couple of 3 lapping sessions from road-going cars as well. So yes, this is the first competitive running on the track. but there's probably been maybe as many as a couple of hundred road cars out there with all sorts of bits and bobs on the tyres and possibly dropping a little bit of oil, as is the wont with older cars. Signs of some battle scars as well on the 204 of Baz Janssen. That's on the left, the right rear of that car.
Close to James thought, but didn't see any point where, you know, both of them got very sideways, but didn't see any contact. But then again, it's a 7-kilometre track, so, sorry, I beg your pardon, 7.004 kilometre track.
4.0 more miles.
Yes, yes, miles are available if you ask nicely.
Yeah, that blue, that mid-blue colour really suits the notchback Mustang, which seems to be the more popular car for racing. There would have been a fastback in 65.
Well, obviously the notchback kicked it off, but it was, I don't know whether it was lighter, but that was the one that tended to be the one that got racing, but obviously as the sort of forerunning model, it was chosen, and maybe also because it made it look more like a saloon, so it could enter British Saloon Car
very good point.
And so on and so forth. And of course, when the equivalent body, the Ford Falcon, came across as well, the GT, that was looked a larger car, but actually handled just as well as the Mustang, and had a huge amount of similarity. And then, of course, later Ford decided its Mercury brand would have a Cougar out there racing as well, and they'd enter some XR7s. That's a bit later in the 60s. But then so many of these models then went across and raced in Trans Am, which was just the most fantastic. When those big Boss Mustangs got in, and great names racing those. And again, the sort of manufacturer battle between the big American behemoth manufacturers, was fantastic. And then don't forget, of course, John, at that stage they had the mighty, mind-bending Can-Am series as well.
Yeah.
And plenty of diversity, as well as, of course, NASCAR and the IndyCar series. But I particularly love the Can-Am and Trans Am.
Yeah. There was a fastback in 65. The notchback, as we're calling it, is probably called the hardtop, but there was a convertible as well. The 289 available in the high performance, the K Code engine, as it was called, with a GT package as well.
But you mentioned earlier Leo Coker.
Yeah.
And this is the last lap, so I'll keep this one short. He had to push and shove. In any big corporation, the people of ideas have to fight first and foremost the people with their hands on the purse. And he absolutely convinced Ford that at this stage, as the Americans were really booming into the 60s, they needed something for the younger people. They didn't need a Hudson or a big Ford or a big Chevrolet or an Oldsmobile. They wanted something fun. They were starting to get money in their pockets. Boy, did he do the company a favor with pushing the Mustang to happen.
Well, can you imagine Ford without the Mustang now? It will be shortly, once the Ford Focus goes out of production in Europe, which is happening at the end of this year, I believe. It will be the only car that they still produce for global markets anywhere in the world. Everything else is an SUV or a crossover or a truck. So the Ford Mustang, there's an E-Mustang as well, of course, but the Ford Mustang will be the only car. So can you imagine Ford without the Mustang? The answer is no. And Jim Farley, who's the current head of Ford globally, who sits behind the big desk at Ford at Dearborn in the US, in Michigan, he races Mustangs, and he is a car guy through and through. Oh yes, obviously, because he's the head of Ford. You would be surprised, and I was telling a story at breakfast this morning, which I won't go into now, but you would be surprised how many people at the very, very top of major automotive manufacturers, they know the business and they are Ford business people, but they might not be petrol heads. Jim Farley's a petrol head. I think he'll be racing a Mustang Challenge car at Le Mans.
Well, think about Ford coming to race in the hypercar class. Jim Farley.
That's Jim Farley.
He's as soon as I first read about him,
Farley.
I was encouraged. And then when I heard him interviewed for the first time when he came across to Goodwood, not just to look, but to race. But he appreciates it. He's got a two-role life. One is running a major corporation, but it's also giving it direction again. Hugely important. Right, Nigel Greensill will put a smile on his face because he's got a few more corners to go, and it will be a Ford victory. And really from the opening couple of corners in this race, those quartet of 289 cubic inch Mustangs were clearly going to pull clear. It's a power circuit, but they've kept it neat and tidy, I must say, on a track that was very, very tricky indeed.
This mid-blue coloured car, John Spires started it off and did his job. Big sideways four-wheel drift by Baz Janssen. That has been conspicuous by its actions. Any moving around, any sidewaysness, any even rear wheel drifting. Is Nigel going to light it up? No, there's a dab of Oppo, but mere dab of Oppo as he comes out the final corner to take the first race of Sunday. The classic touring challenge. Won this Super Sunday by John Spires and Nigel Greensell. Baz Janssen driving solo, coming through in second at 8.5 seconds in the end. And we'll wait for Abraham Bram Bontrup, another half a minute or so back. And again, that car looking like it has just rolled out of the truck. Looks like it's just on its way to a concourse. Beautifully prepared. Here's the red and black Ford Motor Company racing livery. Makes that car look much smaller, actually, that livery. The gloss black. That's third place on the podium from Bram Bontrup. James Thorpe will be the driver that misses out on the podium. It will be a hard job for me to choose which of those top three Mustangs I like the most. Excuse me.
I'd definitely go for the one in third place.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I don't know why.
Red beneath, the black on top, and actually, some cars actually quite often fairly slab-sided cars like this Mustang just look good in the rich red with the black or the gold of on the roof as well. That can look good. But 204 driven hard by Baz Janssen. We did see that little ding in the right rear corner.
Right. I don't know whether that's come in this race. To
yes,
be honest,
quite possibly not. We couldn't really see in the spray at the start.
Well, it was a great start from the navy and silver car that got in. And there was the ding, right on the first corner. Left front of the John Spires car and Nigel Greensell to the right rear of that cream 204 Atlas Horse on the first corner. I have to say, I was so busy watching the great start from third position from James Thorpe. It was the lightest of touches. The Alphas bossed the first part of the race in the sub 2 litre category, but ultimately the number 24 Cortina, Lotus Cortina, coming through to take the prize, with Ed Morris taking over that car and finishing in the end a handy 30 odd seconds ahead of Christian Albrecht, who drove solo in the Alpha. Rory Jack, has just finished third, crossing the line now. And then it was another Cortina, Andrew Haddon in the 79 car, driving solo in the 65 Lotus, ahead of three more Alphas: Guillaume Collinet, Francois Rivaz, Michael Ehrlich. Simon Nobley in fifth position in the Mini was the best of the front-wheel drive cars. And Michel Grosfillier did get to the line, albeit one lap off the leading group of cars, but wins the pre-62 in that lovely, fantastic design of all chrome and white Corvette, the C1 Phase 2 car.
But it was a massive leap from there to the Corvette Stingray that followed it very nicely. But again, Mike, in fact, in fairness, the way the Mustang went as well, more weight was added as they went on. But you look at so many great cars. The initial body shape is super sweet. Of course, they do evolve as they go. But one thing that always strikes me about this meeting, John, is the fact that as soon as you finish one race, the next grid of glorious cars are going out, and the drivers, I think, are going, let's get out before the rain is coming. The forecast sort of seems to get a little bit better overnight, but the promised outbreak of sun keeps getting moved back by an hour or two. But in fact, it's now suddenly saying maybe at 11 o'clock, which is just 20 minutes from now, we may see a little bit of the bright stuff in the sky. But it's going to be a day of probably a damp track, whereas yesterday we thought today was going to be fully wet. And so we've been having a slight reprieve.
Well, get ready for this as we go through the season, because the almost constant action of cars on the track, it reminds me very much of the early days that I saw of British Rallycross at Croft Circuit before it was back to being a fully contiguous tarmac circuit. It was used part of the fields and part of the old circuits. for British Rallycross, and the way they had it was actually same as Linden Hill, the birth of British Rallycross. The start line wasn't part of the track, so you already had a pre-grid and then a grid of cars. As the race was finishing, they were ready to go. So as soon as they came back into the paddock and back down the return road, the next set of cars rolled out. And that is exactly what is happening here. And that is standard operational procedure for Peter Otto. Andrew and I were super impressed. It gives the spectators no respite at all from the racing, or indeed the commentators. But you know what? I'd rather have that than 40 or 45 minute gaps where, you know, people wander away from the tracks. People have picked their spot, or they've wandered into the paddock to see the next set of cars coming out, and they are already on the move. The last cars from the previous race literally just coming back into the Grand Prix, or excuse me, to the endurance racing pit lane, as already this incredible grid of classic endurance racing, some 34 cars split into prototypes of plus and minus 2 litres and GT cars, or called here GT2 cars. There's one invitation as well, Matteo Radiccioni in a Porsche 911 SC. Hello. And they are already on the move. And delighted to say we've got our first guest in here this morning, Bruce.
Gregor Fiskin has decided to join us for the next 3 hours.
Good by Spa standards.
Yes, there's always a sort of riding clause, isn't there?
Yeah, that's in some ways, though, Gregor, that is part of the charm of coming to the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, is that you don't know what you're going to get. The sun was cracking the flags a few weeks ago for the FIA World Endurance Championship, and we had overcast weather for the Creventic 12 hours, but not a drop of rain fell, not of any substance anyway, and the facilities here are great. This is almost a must-do event, surely, now?
Yeah, I mean, look, you come to Spa, it's one of the great tracks, but you come to Spa because Spa will throw everything at you, and you don't come here if you're looking for sunshine and an easy ride. I mean, the charm of Spa and the challenge of Spa is, you know, you can have on one lap, like last night, you can have fog, you can have driving rain, and then you can come around the corner and you can find a bit of grip. And it's all about managing the conditions as they present themselves to you.
Been asking this question of a number of our guests here in the Global Broadcast Centre, and I'll ask it to you as well, Gregor, if I may. What we are seeing now, and what our audience is seeing now around the world on the international TV, is a very slick, polished, very professional paddock full of cars under the auspices of Peter Otto. You don't have to go back very far to see where, yes, there would be some key Blue Riband events, but Patrick Peter and his team have managed to put together a championship of events in the last couple of years, and this year's we'll see them all on TV. When did the momentum start to build to make that a possibility and an actuality whereby series like the Peter Otto Classic Series were able to do that?
I think in life, I think everything always or should continue to get better. I think what I would say about Patrick, when I first met Patrick, 20, 30 years ago, this was a guy who just had a vision, and he was incredibly brave. If he had an idea, he'd just bloody well go and do it. It started with me when he started redoing the Tour de France, the Tour Auto, and he was a great one for coming to people like myself and clients of mine, going, "Come on, bring that car out, come on and do it." And I think he always understood his customer and giving good service.
And that has led to this more than 30 car grid with the 2-litre plus prototypes at the front of the field as we are ready to go racing for another 1 hour contest. They break and go down. They break formation and go down to La Sauce for the first time. Big slidey moment for Maxime Gudat in the Lola T286, the 1976 car, as they get round La Sauce with the usual respect shown for all of the competitors. Cal Meeker there in the 92 Lola T292, also trying to make up some positions. But a nice clean start, Bruce Jones, to this 1 hour race from the prototypes at the front of the field.
One of my favourite cars in the world. As I was growing up, these little 2-litre sports cars, they are so beautiful. You saw me getting distracted on the walk down here this morning, but what I love in this classic endurance racing field is the fact just a little further back you've got the rather larger shapes, the BMW M1, some 935 Porsches as well, but the little nimble toys and Lolas at the front of the field are just fantastic. But on this opening lap, Gregor, we're seeing a fair degree of caution because they're just trying to gauge how slippery it is out there, but so far so good.
Yeah, I think yesterday a lot of the races were started under the safety car, which was really smart because no one had driven in those conditions. Today, well, they're off, and as you say, Bruce, absolutely right. They're managing the grip as they find the grip. A lap or so in, yeah, you can lean on it, but my goodness me, easy to make a mistake on these early laps.
935 Porsche, the A4 car, Luca Litardi, and the 1975 car slow across the line, didn't take the start properly, and that car's got a little bit of problems. That's the number 14 car. It seems, obviously we've been involved with Classic Le Mans in particular for Peter Auto for a while, Gregor. You've seen this style of racing grow and grow through the years, but it does seem to me, even since I was here last year just doing the PA for this meeting, it seems that more cars keep coming out of the woodwork all the time. Where are they coming from, and where are these fines coming from still?
Well, here's the thing. You need to get a car out there racing. In the old days, your FIA papers, you had to have the entirely original car, and we now have a system where if you put together a car, it doesn't even have to be based on an original identity, as long as it's to a correct specification. And it's a broad church, and we'd rather see people out racing. Some people will make a copy of their original car,
yep.
And some people will have a car which is not particularly original, but look, it's for fun, and the rules are the rules. As long as the cars are to the original specification, they should be out there racing.
Yeah. And that's the key thing, and it's very tightly policed in terms of the scrutineering, the same as you couldn't turn up at a WEC or an IMSA meeting with something that looked rather like a current Porsche GT3 car, but had a completely different engine. The question is about being able to race on a level playing field.
Absolutely. That's not to say that with our friends at Goodwood, the Duke of Richmond has worked with people like ourselves to keep some of the racing, keep the content really full of the original great cars. And in some of the races, it's important that owners who own very valuable cars know they're racing against people who've also got important cars. Otherwise, it somehow or other the ingredients start going wrong.
Yeah, no, I fully concur. Just interesting at this very early stage in the race, Gregor, is the fact that the Porsche 935s were not particularly close to the front of the grid, but now we've suddenly got challenging for the Dennis Bush in one of the twin Bush brothers, doing a great job and really pushing Yves Gemama's gorgeous toy, the SC304, which is in that Farsteiner livery. It looks pretty good on any make, doesn't it? That gold colours, but again, it's the mixture of different types of cars.
Yeah, he's driving that extremely well. I think he's just made a pass, and yeah, look, confidence is coming for the bigger cars now. I mean, to be in a Porsche 935, where I'd be having that boost button right down to below zero.
Yeah, Kelvinator, Sub-Zero, that's the way to go.
Sub-Zero.
Yeah, Sub-Zero, absolutely. That car probably doesn't need an accelerator because it's got a light switch, hasn't it, rather than a progressive throttle pedal.
What
I once described driving a 935 in the wet to me like lighting a firework and just waiting for it to go off,
yeah,
which I thought was brilliant.
I think that's fair. But we were talking about cars being original or sort of facsimiles. But to me, it's sometimes looking at the race liveries that stand out. And Crown Racing, you know, very successful with their Lolas. But the one that I like is the later Lola. It's the Otford Group car. Jim Wallace, his cars were presented just so. When it used to run in Thunder Sports in the UK, it seemed a small, delicate car, but in the sort of white with the brown and orange livery. And it's great to see that. Maxime Guénard going very, very well. Thank you very much in third place in that.
Danish Bush now in the lead of the race in the Best of GT2 cars. Keep an eye open for the white-fronted but multicoloured Albert Van Zyl car. That is the BMW M1. But that's a Group 5 car, so very much developed from the cars. There it is. In fact, thank you to our director again. Coming down towards the end of the lap. That car, Bruce, obviously the M1, first of the BMW M cars with the fantastic wedge styling, incredibly run as a Formula One support series with Grand Prix drivers on a Grand Prix weekend racing against each other, also as a road car, then it raced, and then of course we got to the mighty Group 5 version of it.
Yeah, again, I like the original best of all, but what I love when they raced on the Grand Prix support programme, you had the regular drivers who not many people knew too much. They'd just been on the European racing scene, but they were quite tricky cars to drive, those M1s, and hopping out of, you know, your period Formula One car, well, it was contemporary Formula One car at the time, and drive it. But again, wouldn't it be great if today we had a support race? And you think about some of the series that supported Formula One. Do you remember the Alfa Romeo Pro Car series? These incredible modular cars. They took the bodywork off and there was nothing left. But from the outside, it was an Alfa 164 with squinted a little bit. But they made a brilliant sound, unbelievably quick.
There was a Peugeot 505 GTI support race for Grand Prix drivers at Monaco. It's Monaco weekend this weekend. And if you've ever seen the footage of that, obviously the manufacturer was putting money in. It was incredible. It was a bit of a demolition derby, as you can imagine. And they, with the Duvran V6 in that car, beautiful road car. Not really a race car. Some people rallied them, of course, but that was a big car even then to hustle around the Monaco between the Armco. But I like the idea of bringing that back. Problem is now, of course, everybody's affiliated to a manufacturer, and even if you went between the manufacturers, some drivers wouldn't drive one week and they wouldn't drive the next, Gregor. So it falls really at the first hurdle.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think that we look back and it was just a better era, really. I mean, when you had the drivers in any given weekend, famously Jim Clark would drive a Lotus Cortina, a Lotus 25, and probably, poor thing, a Lotus 30.
Yes, exactly.
All in the same weekend.
Yeah, the good news, yes, but it was start money, because of course they weren't paid stratospheric figures back then, and they worked really, really hard. But again, for the fan, it was lovely to see a different mix-ups, a different way of seeing how they could deliver their skills.
This is a question I've often been asked, and I do not know the answer to this. When did start money disappear? When did motorsport become put Formula One to one side? I mean, only relatively recently has Formula One not been a big hole to throw money into and have to raise your sponsorship money, but now all the Formula One teams take money out of it. But when did it become the norm in motorsport across Europe, particularly, that those who were providing the entertainment had to pay to be there, rather than, you'll have talked to drivers who went all the way around, did the European tour and picked up a few £100 there, a few £1,000 there, some Deutschmarks over here, and did the European tour with a car on a trailer or a couple of cars with friends and did that. When did that stop?
I'd say pretty much as you went from the 60s into the 70s, because you think about the likes who did precisely that, racing in Formula Junior, Formula 3, and they'd be doing the Canon Lopet in Sweden, and they're moving down to Germany and then down to Italy, and obviously big prize money for the Monza Lotteria event in those days before chicanes, those great big slipstreaming queues, and they all had stories to tell, but they lived in tents. If they were lucky, slept on the bench seat at the front of their car, but they were the nomads, the gypsies, and particularly a lot of the drivers. You think about Denny Hulme, we were talking about him earlier. He'd have done that with Ian Young helping or hindering as a mechanic, and so on and so forth. But great days. And then just by the time these cars were racing, it had changed a little bit. But prize money, it was the big thing back then. Yeah. They didn't get salaries; they got prize money.
David Hobbs talks about those days and him going around Europe with a car on the back of a trailer. His book, actually, some of the pictures are just tremendous.
I think stateside starting money stayed on a little late into the 70s. And obviously there was some big money series. You think about their Formula 5000 series, thank you very much, said Brian Redmond.
Well, and still does for things like World of Outlaws and even to a certain extent the stock car series. You don't get as many people doing start and park as they used to do. At the front of the field, Dennis Bush has pulled out a handy 8.8 second lead in that mighty Porsche 935. And then it's the prototype battle between the two open top plus 2 litre cars. But there's battles, Gregor, all the way down the field. Gregor Fiskin with us, Bruce Jones and John Hindhaugh in the Global Broadcast Centre here. And that, in some ways, is the joy of this racing. A 30-odd car field here, and there will be somebody that you can find to have a race with, even if it's not in a car that's exactly the same as yours.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing with historic racing is, look, it's nice to win a race, but you could be in a car in the middle of the field, you could be a car at the back of the field, and you've got guys around you that you're trying to beat. And what I love about historic racing is you get out the car at the end of the race, and whether you've won or whether you've lost, if you've had a great race, you shake the other guy or girl's hand. That's historic racing.
Yeah.
It honestly, it's on Monday. I don't think Christian Horner is following this, looking for his next Red Bull co-driver for Max Verstappen. It doesn't matter. We're all lucky to take part in it and drive these magnificent cars in this magnificent place.
A quick shot of the BMW, the other BMW M1. That is the Pro Car shape of car, which is a much purer form of that car, still with the big flared arches, but with wheel arch extensions rather than the Group 5 box arches. And also in there, another big GT car, Paul Chase Gardner, in the DBS V8 Aston Martin, the RHAM, the Roman Hamilton Racing Aston Martin. And what a character RH was, Bruce.
Was he ever? He was... It's hardly surprising when you consider his father was Duncan, and I honestly, one of the funniest books I've ever read was Duncan Hamilton's autobiography. I gave it to my father afterwards. My mother told him not to read it in bed because he was laughing so much that the whole thing was quaking. Brilliant. I mean, how Duncan Hamilton lived to the age of 10 is a bit of a mystery. He was a man of mishap, but great character, and it passed on down. And for so many Aston Martin fans, they were desperate to have something to cheer on. With Mike Sam and David Priest, Robin Hamilton gave it their best, but mechanical reliability was, right across motorsport at that period was iffy at best. But, everyone likes someone who tries and pushes on. And actually, that's something the Japanese always really, really loved, that spirit of maximum attack. And I did something in Japan a few years ago, and this guy was leading his cars by a country mile, Okayama Circuit. We saw it in Formula 1 as a TI, Aida Circuit. And his car, I said, is he just mucking around as he went into the penultimate corner? No, he'd run out of fuel. And then he had to push it on a very, very hot and humid summer day to the finish line. We put it up online, and the number of hits was way bigger than he got for the race. But again, they love that sense of someone pushing and striving. He was just regretting the fact he'd had a few beers the night before.
He was sweating the alcohol out if it hadn't disappeared already. Dennis Bush then, with around about 12 minutes still to run before the mandatory pit stop. Now that's the Group 5
one. That's Albert Weinzierl.
Yeah.
It's so much wider than the Pro Car version, isn't it? But again, it's not as messy as it appears. That's a little bit of a...
Well, he's struggling again with the front end. But the Group 5 regulations, and you see perfectly from the Tails Away shot, you had to have the original bodywork, Gregor, underneath. So those arches, and you see it with the Porsches as well. That was just a little bit of over-ambitious application of the right-hand pedal there. You see it on the Porsche 935s even, particularly, where you can still see the shape of the rear bodywork underneath. But that was the regulation at that point.
Very, very, very much so. And all these cars, it's all about evolution. It's all about pushing it to this year's rule book. And Porsche did that. Underneath there's a little 911 Porsche somewhere.
Yes, you have to look and stand a long way back so you can see it on the tail of a 935. One of the Lolas has pulled off, car number 32. That's Bert Schmeet's lovely little 1976. This was a period actually just at the end of the 2-litre sports car series. Basically, Alpine came and dominated in 74, and that never does a good thing in a championship if a manufacturer comes in with plenty of money. They might win the title, but they can kill the fatted calf alongside. But these cars, you have to appreciate them for what they were, and they were big business for the likes of Chevron and Lola. These were the cars that made the money for them, that allowed them to do other things, and one tends to forget the sheer diversity of what Lola achieved and the number of cars it built across the world with all its success in the States. But for my mark, looking at the Crown Racing model that won the championship in 1973, I think it was, with Chris Craft at the wheel, lovely livery, but it's just small, nimble, neat. It's just tucked in behind that much, much larger Group 5 BMW M1, but again, a very, very pretty racing car. With the advantage, of course, it's a sports car. It has a second seat and doesn't hurt to put your sponsor in and give them a bit of a scare, a bit of a ride, bit of a thrill for their money.
So going back into period then, gentlemen, for those who are watching these cars and wondering, would you have seen these cars racing each other in period? Would they have been on the track at the same time, or would they have been out in separate championships? For the GTs
largely
and the
they'd be in
prototypes.
separate championships.
Yeah.
I mean, the European 2-litre series was standalone, and it's great to see some of the cars. There's John Burton car in the Cannon livery, that's in this race as well. So they were big fields of cars, but then, as I said, it just became a little too expensive.
As things often do. Full course yellow has just been applied to the circuit because of that Lola needing to be picked up. Trevor Reeves, 6th in the sub 2-litre category in the bright orange Chevron. Chevron there's a company with a history. Often, Gregor, slightly overlooked Chevron. Everybody goes on about the Lola T70s, a B16 for me, just as lovely a looking car. And Chevron, the sort of slightly overlooked British sports car manufacturer in some respects.
It shouldn't be. I mean, they're great. They're great cars. And you know, I look back to some of the guys who I knew who started their careers in them, such as Brian Classic. You know, and they were very much. I mean, if I'm not wrong, I think Chevron were Manchester based.
Bolton, yeah.
And you know, they had a great community. I think Red Rose Racing got involved with them. They're great cars. I drove a little Chevron B8, the JCB car.
I've driven that car as well.
The
I raced that at Silverstone a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I shared it with Anthony Bamford's son Joe.
Oh, how fantastic!
And I remember the car was like a little go-kart. It was so good in the twiddly bits at Le Mans Classic, and it was only when we got down the Mulsanne that halfway down, both doors popped open. The
top start to fold out.
Exactly, the tops would suddenly pop out, and I was told, I was pre-warned. So when it was pop, suddenly there was a lot of wind noise. It was like someone had wound the window down unexpectedly. But I mean, when you got to the Porsche curves, oh my God, the mechanical grip was fantastic.
Yeah, and in the wet, they're fantastic. That was my first experience of doing any classic racing. Till Bechtelsheimer owns that car now, ironically, at the new Lola corner, and little BMW engine. I believe that car was the only BMW B8 engine B8 that actually went to Le Mans.
Exactly.
And it had a pretty good season. I think it came 5th in that season when it was the works car. The Nürburgring Nordschleife at the 1000k. It was wet, in fairness. Then runs out of aero. Actually, it's sort of aero limit at about 140 mile an hour.
Exactly.
And then we were just getting to that at Silverstone on the Hanger Straight. And as I said, that was the first experience I'd had of any classic motor racing, and it was probably the ideal car for me to jump into.
Perfect.
To do that, because it was so responsive. And Till said, just drive it like a fast road car and you'll enjoy it. And he was absolutely right. It's a lovely little thing to drive. And then you look at what else they did, like I say, right up to the B16, which is beautiful, swoopy bodywork on that car. And great to see so many of them back out again.
Absolutely, and look at so many young good drivers started, and you know, Paul Vesti, I think was a Chevron guy. There were many of them went out there, and they were a great car, and they're a great fun car now, and it's nice to see so many of them out there. Not to disparage Lola at all.
No, not at all.
Not to disparage Lola at all, but you know, Chevron, as you said, John, you know, shouldn't be overlooked. They're great cars, and you know, with that BMW engine, yeah, that's not the most economically easy option, but it's a lovely engine.
Yeah, and as many manufacturers, and Lola perhaps the kings of this, even when Martin Bahrain took it over, and let's not let's not forget, is that battle is raging on at the front of the field.
We've just popped out of full course yellow.
Yeah.
They had to clear that number 32 Bert Smeets Lola from the side of the track. They've done so in the battle for second place. I mean, Dennis Bush has pulled off into the country. He's 16 seconds clear, but it's Toy versus Lola. It's Yves Skimama in the Warsteiner livery Toy and Maxime Guénard in the Optford Group Lola right under his tail. And again, the track's looking gradually drying out. It was definitely greasy at the start. This is a great little battle, and it's a battle for class as well. It's the 2 litre plus, it's over 2 litre prototype class, but it's a GT2 car leading the race. It's the 935 of Dennis Bush.
The point I was going to make there, Bruce and Gregor, about all of the chassis manufacturers back in those times, and whether it was open top or something like the B8, Gregor, you designed the cars to accept different engines. And fair play to Martin Bahrain, when he took Lola on, there would have been no 675 class in more recent times if he hadn't committed and put 10 chassis down. And again, built to take different. I mean, that car ultimately had a Mazda engine, a badged MG engine, all sorts of stuff. But in those earlier times, you wanted to give yourself as many potential customers as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, in my era at the mall, the little LMP2 Lola we drove had the AER engine.
Yeah,
which was a stunning engine for a short race. Unfortunately for us, not a good one for 24 hours.
No.
But the same engine could have taken the small V8 Judd.
Yes.
And as you said, and then later on, the same tub effectively became an LMP1 car with the big AER V8. And of course, became the perhaps heresy to say, became the Lola Aston Martin, which people call an Aston Martin, but you know, but be correct, it's a Lola.
Yeah, and in fact, it even had a Mazda diesel engine in the States. I've just remembered as well. So you know that was a perfect return to Lola's roots from Martin. Where are we going with these cars in terms of you know, how hard or easy is it to keep these cars running, and how many are we relying on the specialists in parts of the UK and the artisans to be rebuilding engines and fabricating bits and pieces?
Very much so, but like any market, you know, where there's demand, someone's gonna supply, and you know, we've got such a wonderful skill set. The key to all these businesses now is apprenticeships. You know, wonderful companies like WDK. I mean, I can just go through the list. There's so many so many great companies which are now evolved into effectively almost manufacturing cars, tubs, bits, and where you've got the skill set and the skill set's getting passed down, and crucially, you've got all these guys out there driving them, racing them, and sometimes breaking them. Someone's going to fix them, and long may that continue.
Well, if you take a car on a racetrack, you've got to be. Somebody told me this from a manufacturer. If you take a car on a racetrack, whether it's a test session or a race, you've got to be prepared to accept that at some stage one will come back broken, because that's the way of the world. You keep an eye on all kinds of racing and classic cars. Where's the trends going at the moment in the classic racing world? What are the cars that are being most sought after?
Well, the grid gets younger.
Yeah, of course. Well, I can't believe I commentated on some, and we said this yesterday. Hang on, that can't be a classic. That was 5 years ago. I was oh no, it was 25 years ago. Yes. I was commentating on them. But yes, they are getting younger.
The cars are getting younger. I mean, I give great credit to visionaries like Sean Lynn, who's now running the MRL series with Duncan Wiltshire. He's now given a grid to GT3.
Yeah, early GT3 cars. Yeah,
and I've just bought my old track speed British GT3 Porsche back, which we're going to run next year.
Excellent.
But what I'm loving is, you know, up at Donington a couple of weeks ago, you know, the biggest grid was for the pre-war vintage.
Yes.
And I was out there in one of my old pre-war bangers, and there were many people in the pre-war bangers who've now gone and bought GT3 cars. I mean, you know, what a weekend. You can be racing 1922 to 2012. And it's all fun.
Yeah, and a lovely atmosphere in these paddocks as well. Everybody that we've had in, drivers, people involved with teams, people like yourself, what they'll tell us is there's a real camaraderie, a real family atmosphere here.
Absolutely. And again, back to Patrick Peter, you know, he was the guy who gave us good lunches. He gave us places to get coffee in the paddock. He understands that the wives, the girlfriends, the kids who want to come along, you know, it's got to be a great fun weekend, not just for the guy driving the car or the girl driving the car, but everyone. And you know, it's great entertainment.
It's an event. It's an event.
Exactly.
That is the key.
They're long days. You do need stuff to do to fill them for all ages. Going back to the racing, though, Dennis Bush, the pit window is open now. He's the best. He's over 20 seconds clear in his Porsche 95, that glorious pale blue car. Then you've got the prototype over 2-litre battle for second and third place. We've been watching the golden toy, the SC304 from 1976, and Maxime Guinard giving chase in the Oxford Group Lola, but getting no change out of it. Then you have quite a gap back to the under 2-litre class in the prototype, and Tony Sinclair doing a really good job in his Crown Racing Lola, and he's keeping that. He's just got ahead of the BMW, the Group 5 version, the M1. We saw have a spin for Albert Weinzierl, and Ross Hyatt not too far behind in his Chevron B31.
Notice Ralph Kellen has started the Porsche K3, the 1980 car.
He's been making decent progress the last handful
you'd
of minutes.
expect that of Ralph. He'd drive a shopping trolley quick. Still, lovely sense of humour, quietly spoken man. Knows how to pedal a car, though, undoubtedly, Gregor.
Yeah, no, that you know, you don't just lose it with the passing of a couple of years.
No.
And Ralph's a long career, great career, and it's just wonderful seeing these heroes out there enjoying their racing.
Yeah, Jim Norman over from the States, I noticed as well, in another K3, who I call his name in some of the American racing as well. And Trevor Reeves out there as well in the 315. That's the another Chevron. And just behind him is Beat Eggyman in the Cheetah. Now, tell our views about the Cheetah, Bruce.
Swiss driver in a Swiss car.
Yes.
But not one made with holes in it. A Cheetah sort of came and went. And Chuck Graminger designed the cars. But, you know, it was a time when you had lots of manufacturer variety. And sometimes they were aiming at a moving target. Because of sports car racing, back then, it was a time of flux. And I mean, sports car racing over the decades, Gregor's had times of flux. But it was a time that quite quickly got forgotten. It was superseded because suddenly you know, all focus was on Group C. But, you know, it's good to have these manufacturers, and, you know, some made it work and Graminger didn't make it work. But I celebrate historic racing, that we see not just the overall winners, we have the participants across the years.
Yeah, very much so. And I look at this era, and I look at the era of Le Mans, and I'm always taken to my place of residence, which is Queensgate Place, Mews, where my late great friend Alain de Cadenet built the de Cadenet Lolas with Gordon Murray. Yeah. Sometimes paid Dick Crosswick for an engine, sometimes had a tussle for old Dick to get paid.
Sometimes, yes.
Quite often, but it was an era where enthusiasm, a modicum of talent, and a desire to represent your country at Le Mans could take you a very, very long way.
And that sometimes disparaging kind of the sort of garagista mentality, but that actually built the kind of support system and infrastructure that we are leaning on now to keep some of these cars on the road and on the racetrack in the UK. I should have asked you this earlier, Gregor. What's your first memory of motor racing, and particularly, say, of Le Mans? When did you become aware of it, and when did it grab you?
Okay, well, 1978, my mum and dad took my brother and I from Forfar in Scotland, the back of a 1929 Speed 6 Bentley, to support the 1978 Le Mans 24 Hours, and the Bentley Driver Club were allowed a couple of parade laps. Well, the parade. So
hang on, your first experience of Le Mans was going round the track in the back of a 1929 car.
Yeah, exactly. And we got to Tête Rouge.
So he's won. Stop. No one else phone, no one else called. Don't email. We have a winner on that one.
Thank you.
That's brilliant.
But as we got to Tête Rouge, the parade had already turned into a race. My mother was shouting to Dad, "Ian, slow down." My brother and I were going, "Go on, Dad, go on."
Catch him. Yeah.
And of course, I used to devour Motorsport magazine with Dad up in Scotland. We were a long, long way away from where it was happening. but I'd read this wonderful novel, I forget the name of it, but it was about a fairy tale thing about someone taking an old Bentley back to Le Mans.
It was Bruce Carter, Speed 6.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Bruce. It was exactly that book. And as I saw the trees at Tête Rouge, as something just went off in my head, it was like, I'm going to come and do this. And of course, like,
how old would you have been then?
12 or 11.
So very much of the formative years.
Very, and I just thought somewhere I want to race a Bentley at Le Mans. And
I have literally got goosebumps as you're telling that story.
Yeah, and it was a defining moment in my life, and it was just amazing. Of course, it was the old pits at Le Mans as well. Nothing had changed, and on that weekend, the other thing that stuck right in my mind was the chairman of the Bentley Driver Club, Ray Wiltshire, Duncan Wiltshire's dad, said, there's a local guy called Jean Rondeau who has invited some of the BDC to come and visit his shop. And I met Jean Rondeau.
Yeah.
Here we go, something's happening on track.
Jim Norman, is it? The Interscope livery 935. Again, one of the corners that's been catching people out today has been Speaker's Corner. And last night when it was very heavy rain, certainly a few were looping it there.
Very little runoff there.
Yeah.
The new motorcycle cut out there, had endurance motorcycling here for the last couple of seasons, which is a relatively new thing. But that might bring... Well, the pit window closes in 4 minutes, and we still have some of the leading drivers yet to pit. So
almost all of the leading drivers. Well, Dennis Bush is continuing for another lap. It's yellow flag clearly at the moment. Maxime Guénard has come in from moved ahead into second place, but Skimama is in the pits. But is that Porsche going or not, John?
No, it's still yellow flags. I think he's reversed it backwards, and we've got one of the Toyota snatch vehicles heading down there on the interior return road. Gregor, please continue that fabulous story.
Well, I met Jean, who was, just like Alain de Cadenet, charming. And there was this car which I remember as a kid, and it had Le Point written on the nose.
Yeah.
And it was a little Group C car.
Yeah.
And this guy went and won Le Mans.
Yeah.
Just in
a car with his own name.
A car with his own name at Le Mans. And then some years later, I drove myself for Yves Courage. And that tradition of great French garagistes, Henri Pescarolo. I remember having many lunches with Henri and Yves. And the spirit of the garagiste in Britain is the same as the garagiste in France.
Yeah,
it's the same. It's guys with an ambition to go and do it, and that's what it's all about.
We've just full course yellow here, by the way, with just on 2 and a bit minutes to go. And this might catch one or two people out who have not yet pitted, because it considerably slows the lap time from round about 2 3/4 minutes. And in fact, Dennis Bush, with a 2:46 flat last time around, is the fastest lap of the race. The track conditions must be getting better, because they are personal and class fastest laps for all of the top four, Bruce.
And among those in the pits, Nick Padmore has just taken over the Crown Racing Lola. That's leading the under 2 litre prototype class. That came in from 4th place. Good job done as ever by Tony Sinclair. But right now, of course, Nick will be getting in the car. Always you ask the driver who's getting out, what's it like? Nick, like all pros, would have been watching the screens, trying to gauge with lap times and any visuals on corners. But the good news is, we couldn't see it first, but the Interscope Porsche, the 935 of Jim Norman, we didn't know if it was on the tarmac or not. It was actually in the gravel, just on the exit of Speaker's Corner. A high-up shot let us know, but it's been towed clear. So
how good have the track services and recovery been this weekend? That the full course yellows have been, generally speaking, short and got back to racing. And I actually do think that, particularly for this type of racing, but actually in all forms of multi-class racing, which I do the contemporary stuff as well, I think full course yellows used properly are far better than bringing out the safety car, because it can ruin a multi-class race, or you have to extend the safety car to get wave bys to mitigate the safety car. And for this type of racing, in an hour-long race, Gregor, it has to be right to do full course.
We had, in both the races I've been in, we've had full course yellows. It's a great system. You have your rev limiter in a certain gear, whether it's second or third gear. It's really easy to follow.
Yeah.
And then it goes green, and it doesn't mess up the racing.
Yeah. I said yesterday, obviously, no communication pits to car here. So you do have to keep your wits about you for when you go back green. In more contemporary racing, you'll have your engineer going a minute, 20 seconds, and then doing the countdown as Eduardo or whoever the race director is doing it over the racing. So you do have to be looking all the time to the next marshal's post.
Yeah, I mean, with circuits like Spa, which have got these really easy to see high vis boards, it's bright. You can't miss it, and I think it works very well. That's not to say there's not a time and a place for a safety car.
Absolutely great.
But of course there's the safety car is use of the safety car, and how you can use the safety car as a strategy is brilliant. But I like the full course yellow. I think it and particularly when you've slowed your speed down, then you see the incident. There's double yellows waved.
Yes.
I think it keeps our wonderful friends, the marshals, safe. It allows them to deal with it, the incident, and off we go.
Unfortunately, the Lloyds of London, Russell Bus-driven Chevron B31, that has crabbed very badly. I noticed it coming down past the pits, but unfortunately for them, on the track. Just trying to gauge what exactly
he had his left hand up as if he was going to pull off the track there for a moment, and then, I mean, these are not cars that have ECUs that you control alt delete with the power cycle, so whatever it was seems to have cleared. A cough, a splutter, I don't know what, but that lovely Chevron running again. Are you out today, Gregor?
Yes, I'm in one of the last ones where we've got the second part of the Gentleman's Challenge.
What a grid for that, by the way.
Oh my God, talk about, I mean, a couple of years ago it was a bit sparse, but it just has rounded up a wonderful array of all sorts of cool things.
Yeah. And what are you driving?
I'm driving with Pat Blakeney-Edwards in the affectionately named Junkyard Dog, the little 260 Cobra, and we're going to have a tough battle today, because I think we may be blessed with a dry race later. We did well, and again, fun enough, Patrick used his considerable experience yesterday for us. Saw the full course yellow, looked at his watch, and went, "Oop, pit window open," and he popped in, and that gave us a great result yesterday.
Yeah.
Looked like a winning result.
It was a winning result.
It was top step of a podium.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah. Coming out of the pit lane now, this lovely BMW engined, the number 82 coming out of the pit lane, and
a Seller with its distinctive sort of jelly mold shape, but they were effective. Not the most beautiful cars to my eye as a sort of young teenager. Just noticing on my timing screen, I don't know if yours is saying the same, but it's got 2 pit stops listed for the Busch Twins Porsche 935, our race leader.
Oh yes, you are entirely correct. The pit lane window closed about a couple of 3 minutes ago, and if I get the right part of my timing screen, I just want to see if why that Busch car.
Okay,
right. Dennis
lights
Busch
aren't working.
Yeah, Dennis Busch came in as the full course, or just after the full course yellow, and then left. So that was the most recent stop, I think.
Well, he's listed as having a 30-second advantage, but it's listed as just having come out of the pits on this lap. So he could have squeaked in a second stop, but if you're sitting on a margin like that and you've got a fastest lap...
Well, there's been a driver change, so it's Mark behind the wheel now.
Yes, yeah. No,
and Dennis did start that car. I do think it is... I'm not going to say it's getting drier. I think it's getting less wet. I think is the fairer thing. I can't even see a drying line at the moment, but the new drivers getting in have got significantly better conditions. Now, if you are a new driver getting in, you do have to get used to it. And sometimes that is, Gregor, just a little bit of an advantage for somebody who drives straight through, comes into the pit, they know how the track is evolving.
Yeah, look, if someone's double stinting, and they've got a big advantage. It's not easy jumping into a car in the middle of the race. It's just that when you're the starting driver, you get an out lap, you stop on the grid, you get another out lap. You're kind of eased into it. It's tough, but it's the same for everyone.
True. So are we going to see you at some more of the Peter Auto events, all being televised this year? Dijon Prenoir, my 2 esteemed colleagues, will be looking after that one? You're going down there for that?
Not doing Dijon. The next one, we're going to run the Delara Judd Shorty's old car, which is
at Le Mans.
At Le Mans, which Martin's been very gracious. We've put it back into the Orica colours for Le Mans.
Right. Okay.
So it's back into PlayStation colours. But I've reassured Martin I've got a set of roll centre bodywork to go back on it.
Yeah.
But we're going to run it. We're going to run that at France, and we're going to run a lovely Duchamal 911 ST Porsche.
Oh my
goodness. Which Jackie Duchamal ran there at Le Mans in 1971. And we're running an E-Type as well, which hasn't got a Le Mans history, but they've generously allowed to come, and we're going to have a great time.
And we've also got Imola, which I will be at, Ricard, and then, of course, end of the season back down to Portugal. I mean, this is truly, Patrick Peter has truly assembled, which is a championship now as well, we should remind people, but he's assembled a lovely set of events for across the season.
No, it's absolutely world class, and when I see the amount of friends we've got over here from the United States this weekend, there's great racing all around the world, but people will travel for this type of, as you said, it's an event.
With a capital E.
With a capital E, and then I love. I mean, the tapestry of historic racing now between the Le Mans Classics, the Peter Otto, Sean now with the Motor Racing Legends, and of course Goodwood, and then down to the good old Vintage Sports Car Club.
Yeah.
I mean, wherever you are in the world, there are boys and girls out there having fun with cars, one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. Gregor, we'll let you get away.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for letting me come and chat away with you. Great honour to be with you guys. You are all the legends of Le Mans commentary.
Well, thank you.
And you guys are a huge part of the sport. You are the voice of Le Mans. You're the voice of historic motorsport now, and we're very lucky to hear you and get this great coverage.
It's very kind of you to say. Come and find. We're actually right next to the pre-grid area at Le Mans at the end of the Bugatti circuit. That's where the TV compound sort of decants to. So please, if you find yourself down there, come in. We will. I'll have the coffee machine there.
Fantastic.
So there'll be a good cup of coffee.
That sounds like an evolution or even an upgrade.
Yes, it certainly is.
John, thank you very much.
Gregor. Lovely to see you.
Andrew, Bruce, take care.
Absolutely winning on my first Le Mans story as well. We're never going to better that. That is absolutely fantastic. Down to the business end of this race now. Bruce and Andrew Marriott rejoining us as well. A couple of incidents being noted as well, including that little coming together between Jim Norman that sent him off the track in the number 100, the Interscore Porsche, and Paul Chateau in the number 82 Osella was involved in that as well.
Don't see, John, that Padmore is really flying. Padmore in the 2-litre car is closing up on Shimama, and I think he'll be right on for the podium position in the next lap. Two in front of him race together so much in those two cars. Often seen them racing at Le Mans in the top plateau, Le Mans Classic, always racing together. There, just see the Interscope. Remember the race by Danny on Geis. Danny the fastest.
Flying Hawaiian.
And one of the few people that made the transition from being a drag racer to then a Formula 5000 racer. And Interscope Racing was a guy called Ted Field, a bit of a wild character actually. But
Nick Padmore's just put in the fastest lap in class for the sub 2 litre prototypes at 2:51.0. Still that incredible 2:46.0 for the 935 with Dennis Bush earlier on.
Lovely to see those 935 K3s.
Yeah, fantastic.
Some cars, histories, and one, Bobby Aitken, not Bobby Aitken, Bob Aitken.
Yeah.
His dad ran for Rahal.
Yeah,
I saw in the paddock before the start of the race. And Chris Hyatt's another man to watch. He had a very good run in Barcelona. And then I think you seem to remember Johnny had a problem right near the end when he had a podium in sight. So watch for Chris Hyatt. He could come up the field a bit further yet.
Yeah, just noticed a bit of front-end damage there actually on Emmanuel Brigand's car. That was the number 2 935, little front splitter. So there's been a bit of contact or maybe thumping a curb. Very easy to do if you run a little bit wide.
Front just dragging on the ground a little bit on that car.
Low. He wondered what the noise is. He won't be able to see it. He might be able to feel it, but he'll hear it.
Urs Beck has taken over from Ralph Kellner's.
Well, battle absolutely royale. This is the number 85 coming through. That's the Crown Racing Lola. We just talked about Nick Padmore. He was hunting down the golden toy of Yves Scamama, and he was catching him hand over fist and made the move look very easy. Now we have three classes of car in the top 3 positions. The race led by Mark Bush in his GT2 class, a Porsche 935. He's 22 seconds clear of the leading prototype over 2 litre. That's Maxime Guénard, but now it's no longer Yves Scamama in 3rd place. It's the leading under 2 litre class car in the prototype class. It's that Crown Racing Lola, black with the red, yellow and gold stripes on it. And Tony Sinclair drove it beautifully, but Nick Padmore, well, he does what it says on the tin. He's in the programme, actually, or somewhere, he's listed as British Fast Racing Driver.
British Fast.
He's driving as well as Chris Craft drove it in period.
Yeah. Hello to Malcolm Cracknell, who's watching and listening back in the UK. Morning, Crackers. Or, yeah, still good morning to you. Malcolm Cracknell, the man behind the formation of dailysportscar.com, and a mine of information. And this will be absolutely right in his wheelhouse. I know he watched a little bit yesterday, and I know he's tuned in now, and I'm sure he was enjoying the Gregor Fiskin memories of Le Mans. Crackers, good to know that you are listening in, mates.
It was wonderful, wasn't it, listening to Greg? I had not heard him talk like that before. It's terrific. I wonder how you got on.
I do try and get the best out of people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
I am going to get the fact that we are now apparently the voices of classic racing, says Gregor Fiskin on the T-shirt.
Put that on the website. I wondered how you got on, John, with the pronunciation of the guy who's in 9th place, who is...
Stefan Nguyen.
Well, it's...
Nguyen.
So I went on a website to find out. It is the most popular name in Vietnam. It is the biggest name in Vietnam.
Okay.
And it is Nguyen.
There was an Australian racing driver who was just... Rob.
And he came in very quickly. It was quick in Formula 3000 for a while. He is racing until very recently in some sort of drifting series. Back in Australia.
Maybe there's more money in that. But yeah, he was quick.
He was quick. And then he ran out of money, of course. But anyway... Bush still doing a great job at the front in the Porsche. And Padmore now shown third. Young Guido Jr. and Shimama have raced a lot together.
Yeah, he separated them.
Yeah, and I had this discussion with Shimami yesterday about is it a toy or is it a Toj? He gave up a very interesting answer. He says, "Well, I'm Swiss, who's mainly lived in America, and I call it a Toj." But he said, I think the French call it a toy.
The Germans call it a toy. I tell you what.
No, the Germans call it a toy.
It's a German car, so we'll go with that. But you know what? The thing about that, when you start, in those days, when I started, I read about motor racing rather than watched it by and large. So to me, in the early 70s, it was Carlos Pace until I heard his name was Carlos Pache. Why would you know these things? Yeah, exactly. But again, you learn, hopefully, as you go along. And again, I think it's great to still be able to read about motor racing coming from a journalistic background. But when I joined Autosport, they corrected me on quite a few things. But you looked, you listened, and you hoped you learned.
I was lucky to know Carlos Pache pretty well. And it was one I was absolutely destroyed when I found out in the Brands Hatch pit lane that he'd been killed in a private plane accident. Well, he was a wonderful captain, very, very quick. Bernie loved him. He was one of the drivers that Bernie really loved.
Yeah. Or Mocco.
Yeah.
So sad to see the number 82 Osella out of the race. That's Paul Chateau's car, and of course Osella was actually successful in the early days of the European 2 litre Championship with.
We did have A-Bus as well.
Yeah, we did
in that championship. Yeah. I don't think we got any today, and they were pretty effective on occasion.
With little Arturo Mezzario pressing the pedals.
Absolutely, I was going to say that. Yes. So now, what can Padmore do about Guida?
Well, he's only lapping about a second and a bit faster, but he's got to find that's part of 20 seconds with 11 minutes remaining. So
here he is, the Padster.
Suddenly seems to be a bit more spray. It might just be to my eyes. I shouldn't be tired at this time of the day.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right.
I think it's raining at La Source.
Yeah.
Yeah, times are going out a wee bit, except for Frédéric Rouvier in the B36 Chevron from 1676. It's a very early Chevron. That one, just the 2 horsepower. No,
very rudimentary.
Yes, absolutely. That's second in the prototype sub 2 litre category. He's just put that car's fastest lap of the race in, but it's a 2:56. And Mark Bush, who hasn't been as quick as his brother Dennis in general, but his times have slipped out to 2:53. That car did a 2:46 earlier on, but other times are going out as well.
I think the rain's coming down. Suddenly it's jumped out of the Ardennes forest as it does, and it's doing a spar on us again. Back in the period, there was massive rivalry between Chevron and Lola with their very similar 2-litre cars.
Yeah.
Sometimes one year the Chevron would be a little bit better than the Lola, the next year it'd be the other way around. And the guy in the Cheetah was just waving through the Padmore car.
I'm just checking the pit stop out of pit window infringements.
Got it, yeah. You're up on the screen, aren't
But I don't think there's anybody at the sharp end of the field. Oh, there is one. That's Michael Kammerman, 3rd place in his M1 Group 5, 3rd in GT. Now, he's going to get a full lap penalty, as are about 5 or 6 other cars. But I'm fairly confident in saying there's nobody else in a class podium position.
Well, that's, as you say, 3rd place in the GT2 class, and that means that...
Oh, no, 2nd place in GT as well. Well, number 2. No, sorry, I misread that.
Okay, that means Lars Rollner in the 935 or 9345 Porsche will move to 3rd place in
the 9345. Now, there's a car. If we see it, it's bright yellow. One of only 10 prototype cars built by the factory, or at least kits of cars built by the factory. Essentially, it's a Porsche 934 with a 935 turbo engine. Underneath, it's a Porsche as it had to be, but effectively an early 911, and also the rear bodywork, wide arches and rear wing grafted onto the 934 from the 935. And Brumos and Peter Gregg saw the opportunity for the 1977 series to get Porsche to produce this halfway house between the 934 and the 935, 934/5 or 0.5 in Porsche terminology. And they took a couple across to the States, and Peter went across to Porsche Motorsport with some Brumos mechanics to have a look at what could be done. And then, very frustratingly for them, just as the 77 season was about to start, IMSA decided to outlaw the car, and it wasn't allowed to race in IMSA. So having the car in the States, this is the bright yellow machine that's out there at the moment, they decided that they and a couple of their customers would go across to SCCA instead. They were running the Trans Am in those days, and they'd enter it in the Trans Am series, which they did. And it was mightily successful, winning 6 out of 8 races that year, and thereby the championship. But no, because at the end of the championship, it was disqualified from that championship, and a standard 934 was given the championship. So it had an odd and fairly short in period career as a sort of a wedge to get into the regulations, and so quite a lot of them of the 10 were converted back to being full 935s, and of course they're much rarer in the 9345 specification. I know there's certainly 3 that are still 3 of the chassis numbers that are still in the 9345 specification.
John, I know we've all got great images of them all, but one that's absolutely burnt into my mind is standing down at Arnage in the night and seeing the 935s go away from you with the 2 twin turbochargers close to the ground, glowing cherry red with a reflection in the racetrack.
Yes.
Phenomenal. I've never seen a picture of it, but I have it in my mind of actually watching it in real life. So Bush 2 Bush boys doing a great job, aren't they? And
that is a 935. That is the full 935. Again, the big Group 5 arches, but you can see the original Porsche 911 rear wings under those big box arches at the back.
And of course, the roof line remains the same.
Yeah, the centre part of the car is the 911 from that era. The there was the pop-up headlight conversion that was done to the road-going 911s. It never really caught on. There was one or two of them got out there, and I don't think it quite worked, but as a race car, it was fine. They repositioned their headlights down into a fog light position. You can see quite clearly as that number 54 car comes into Les Combes. But in the middle of that is the very upright windscreen of a 964 Porsche 911. And then somebody entering from stage left there, having run straight on. I think that's the number 14 935 as well that is out there, which is a 935 A4. That's the Luca Litardi and Mario Pio Masella car. It's a 1979 car.
So Max Guenard still in second place. Correction, yesterday I said that together Armand Mille, he'd won a race in the VDV, a 6-hour race, a couple of weeks earlier in a Chevron. The race was not where I said it wasn't at Ricard, it was at Magny-Cours, so apologies for that. Yep.
Wrong French double-barreled name for a
wrong
track,
French Grand Prix track.
Yes, indeed.
There's Padmore just going through our picture. Closing on Guenard. Of course, Guenard's got the benefit of DFV power. That's got a Formula 1 engine effectively in the back of it. Those, I think Gregor talked about that, didn't he? The chassis accepting the different engines.
Yeah, and it was essential, wasn't it, in those days? All of the chassis manufacturers, you didn't have the luxury of being able to pair up with an OEM, a manufacturer like a Ford or a BMW or whatever, because they weren't putting heaps of money in at that point. So you were selling these cars to customers.
Yeah.
And therefore, you might have a 2-litre engine in for a championship from one manufacturer. Another chassis might end up in another manufacturer's another championship that you could have a 3-litre or even a bigger engine in. And therefore, the chassis had to be adaptable, and you had a set of kits to allow different motive power units to go in.
We think of the Ford DFV, Cosworth DFV engine as the most successful Formula 1 engine of all time, but it did service at Le Mans, and Gregor mentioned the Rondo and meeting Rondo and the fact that little manufacturer won, but he won, not with a French car, but it had a DFV in the back.
Yeah. Well, and of course the DFVs spawned all kinds, all the way through the DFXs and the IndyCar engines, and went for a very, very long time. Back into last year, I was fortunate enough to be at Cosworth to ostensibly to go and have a look at the Aston Martin Valkyrie racing engine, although the Bugatti Turbolon engine was there at the same time. Cosworth still building engines, everything they do in-house, building the valves springs, everything they do in-house. And they have become, once again, the go-to specialist engine manufacturer for particularly normally aspirated multi-cylinder engines. And the incredible thing about that Valkyrie engine is in the road car, it produces over 1,000 horsepower. I'll just say that again. In the road car, it produces over 1,000 horsepower. It's only 700 in the race car by mandate. But in the road car, it is Euro 6 compliant. So you can take it in to the ULEZ zone in London without having to pay the extra 25 quid or whatever it is.
And of course, they've done the engines for Gordon Murray's.
The G50.
The G50's got Cosworth engine in. Last time, a long time since I've been there, they also forged their own pistons. So they
do everything. They bought, for a while, Marla, which was over the back, and Cosworth were all part of the same company, and they still, so they literally still do everything. It is one of the biggest artisan companies that you'll find. They've almost got a whole industrial estate now on the outskirts of Northampton.
So St James's Road, wasn't it? But they're also fantastically good at electronics.
Well, they've got PI now as well over at Cambridge. They do all the steering wheels, every Indy car. It's the Indy 500 later on this evening. We'll be dashing back to watch that, and well done to Prema.
45.
Every Indy car has a Cosworth steering wheel. All the LMP2s have and most of the GT3s have a.
That's Rouvier, who's the Revolvier.
Very good. I like what you did there. number 45 car going around. That was third place, by the way, in the sub 2 litre category.
Dropped it into the chicane, has it? Yeah.
It's coming out of the chicane.
Was it? Yeah.
I think
there's the pit entry road on the right.
He's looking down at the dash.
That's not a good place to be.
No.
There he is.
No, he is. Got the Alcamel transponder on the side of his helmet there, so that we know who's in the car. Excellent job again, by the way, by Alcamel. Thank you very much to the very hard-working team who seem to be almost ubiquitous now. I was just about to say, I think we might get an early bath on this. The leader was going on the final lap, but the red flag has come out, and that will take the results back to the end of lap number 18. So lap 19 will not exist for the...
Yeah, but Padmore just got past Gwynnar
into second. But I think that might go back.
Yeah, I think it will, yeah.
I think that might go back to the end of the last completed lap. Now, it doesn't matter for their class positions, Andrew, but it would for the overall.
It really is tipping it down again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bruce has just gone out to do this next podium, and he'll come back, I think, soaking wet.
Somewhat damp dog. What a drive by the Bush brothers.
Twins, aren't they?
Yeah, Mark and Dennis.
I believe that they're in the tyre balancing business.
Well, that's a skill. I'll tell you that,
I think they make the machines.
Really?
Yeah,
well,
I believe so. Anyway, love these cars. They're just so aggressive looking, aren't they?
Brilliantly bonkers. When you think about that era of car.
Yeah, that's obviously a period livery, but I'm not sure. I don't remember Mambo.
No.
But anyway, car looks great, and Bush Twins did a super job. Nick Padmore, maybe second, maybe third. Absolutely stunning drive.
Wins his class.
With Tony Sinclair.
Yeah.
Wins his class anyway. Meanwhile, the 45 car is still stranded there. Presumably the motor won't fire up.
Well, I think that one would be the Ludwig. That's a 79 car, isn't it? Yes, it is. So that'll be the Ludwig Mambo team car.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, you remember a lot of these liveries, but not all of them.
Yeah.
Here he was at the start. He started in 4th place, of course, in the opening lap, but it was soon, there he goes, inside the 52 toy, however you want to say it. Had a nice BMW Pro car in there. We had Tony Sinclair going well. Here he is, and then handing over to...
If you like that car, you can buy it as a slot car, Carrera Digital.
Yeah.
For €68. The Kramer 935 K3. And
quite a lot of incident in this race. Fortunately, no damage done though. Several spins, but looking down the German-built car. Lovely camera work again.
Yeah, and looking back at the early part of the race, we now realise that gradual deterioration
we do, don't we,
of the weather. But I mean, lovely to see this mix of cars. We've seen, you wouldn't have necessarily seen this mix of cars in period, but
no, you wouldn't.
It's good to see these cars out together. That just looked like the mechanical failure for that.
Did we give the Aston Martin a bit of a...
Oh, yes, we did.
I thought you must have. I was still on the podium when you were doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, the Robin Hamilton machine.
It's a brute. It really is when you look at it.
But it looks like a brute.
Our colleague Peter Snowden knows a lot about that car.
I think he's probably driven that car.
Or is it? I think there were 2 of them. Maybe there's a replica as well, but maybe Snowy.
He's a bit busy on the final qualifying for the Nürburgring coming up in mid-June. We'll have that for you in sound and vision as well. Straight after Le Mans, that's the week after Le Mans. A tired but expectant and happy band will be travelling across from Le Mans to the Eiffel Mountains and bringing you that. So the unofficial results then, Mark Busch winning in the K3935, the Ludwig Mambo team car, ahead of Maxime Grinard. Yes, we were taken back to the end of lap 18, as I suspected, with Nick Padmore winning the sub-2 litre prototype category ahead of Yves Guimama in the toy. Second in the GT2, fifth overall, Emmanuel Brigand in another 935, although from 1981, with the Charlie Hyatt Chevron B31, second in the Proto Sub-2 category. Fred Rouvier was the car that brought out the red flag.
But he's lucky.
Now, yeah, he's greyed out, but I still think he'll be on the podium.
Yeah, I think he will.
In that Chevron B36.
Gone back a lap. So
yeah, Lars Rollner in third in the GT2 Porsche 9345. So that was the car we were talking about, the number 180, one of the rare cars out there.
Something happened to Simon Ungun because he dropped to 12th place. He was up in 6th or 7th. So
the bright,
he must have had a problem.
Bright yellow 180, the Puerto Rico shade band for Frédéric Rouvier. And we rapidly move on because there is no stopping us here to our midday race, and we're right on time for that. This is the ERL Endurance Racing Legends second race of the weekend, and this is for GT2 cars.
So they've raced already, John. We saw them yesterday. We had Maxwell Lynn winning the race, having won the 2 races at Barcelona. So we haven't
lead in the championship.
He must be leading the championship from Perodo and Cadore and Collard, who was on the pole for yesterday's race, is on the pole for this one indeed as well, with alongside the man that he coached, Francois Perodo, the man with a phenomenal car collection. I believe he's got one of the greatest motor racing car collections in the world. So rain is coming down. You can see that now. Conditions yet again here in the Ardennes have changed, as they have done in so many famous races, and changed the outlook of so many races in the past. John, you're about
just a note here, and whilst we've got a moment, I was going to mention this earlier on, but I wanted to get into the main part of our broadcast today, just to pay tribute to a couple of racers who were killed yesterday in events at the Jim Clark Rally and at Donington Park. Di Roberts, co-driver, after an accident near Duns in the Scottish borders on Saturday morning. James Williams taken to hospital with serious, but we hear not life-threatening injuries. We wish him well. And then later yesterday, Motorsport UK announcing the death of Julian Grimwade, who will be known to many people in this paddock. Julian was competing in the Vintage Sports Car Club event, the VSCC event at Donington Park. Of course, we offer our sincere condolences to everyone on both of those events who will have been affected by those accidents, and also to the friends and family. And may they rest in peace, and may their memories be a blessing. Just a sad reminder that motorsport is still always dangerous, and why we always talk about safety.
Yeah, Julian, a lot of stuff on the internet from various VSC people. A very popular, charismatic character, big bushy beard and hair, and sat on those Edwardian cars, didn't sit in them to race them,
indeed,
sat on them. And a tragic loss for that community. With the rally co-drivers, it still happens occasionally, and not for the first time on that particular rally.
No.
It's a very fast, it's one of the few rallies in Britain where they are allowed to shut
close
the roads.
Yeah.
And we've had incidents on that before.
They changed the law about that some years ago. The Jim Clark Rally was one of the actually precursors to the law being changed, to take away the necessity to still follow the speed limits. The Isle of Mull had a rally because
I've been to the Mull rally, and
they had their own local arrangements, shall we say? But
and of course you have that in Ireland all the time. But,
terrible news from both of those paddocks, and we wish those involved in those events, the very best going forward. So we move on here to our penultimate race of the morning. We've got about an hour's gap before we move into the afternoon session, which will start with historic touring cars, then Group C, then the classic endurance race for the Group 1 part of the CER, and we'll finish off with the second race of the weekend for the what's called the Gentleman, a 45-minute race starting just after 5 o'clock Central European summertime. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are around the world, and a particular hello to many of you who are joining us on the Goodwood channel for the first time. You weren't with us at Barcelona. Hopefully enough to want to be part of the celebrations and the excitement again when we get to Dijon-Prémois in a couple of weeks' time. And then, of course, we're off to Le Mans Classic. It's Paul Ricard, down at the south of France, as it's tipping it down now on the grid. And we've got Imola as well. Can't wait for that one. Very excited for that. My only disappointment about the Imola race is that I'm away doing some work at the Circuit of the Americas, doing a driving event at the Circuit of Americas in the early part of that week, so I can't drive to Imola. I love driving down to Imola. And then it'll be the end of season event as tradition dictates, with the Peter Auto family of events, and that will be down in Portugal.
And talking of their family events, one of the biggest and most successful categories is endurance racing legends.
Absolutely.
And they've got so many cars now that they've had to split it into two. So we've got this GT2 race, and that indeed has got 34 entries in its own.
I mean, that's incredible. I mean, we talked about this earlier on about, when we first started to see an organised version of the big single-seaters, everything was in there, and you'd probably get 15 or 20 cars, and probably 3, 4, 5 classes in that. And it has grown so much since then, this form of racing. They said it yesterday, but if you are just joining us, from me, I remember these cars in period. I can't get my head around the fact that these are now running at classic meetings.
That car has ETD sticker in.
Yeah.
Level 5 racing.
Yeah.
And it used to run 555, Scott, didn't they, on those cars? But that's 556, that one. I remember that one racing. That might have been the car that did it in there at Daytona. Was a last lap touch with 2 cars at the Daytona one year for that category. And I think that, I've forgotten the end result of it, but it was a battle.
There's been a few recently, even in the recent years.
Yeah.
993 shape, but that is, of course, the Black Swan Racing colours. The 54 normally, or 540 as it is here. And that is Tim Pappas and Jerome Blake and Molan, one of the most enduring races. So that's a 993 GT2 Evo from 1999. The 993 in road specification had given way to the 996 by 1997, and the 996 being the first 911 with a water pump, and it had been oil and air cooled before that, Luftgekühlt, air cooled cars. But the racing cars stayed with the 993 central section for quite some time.
Nice to see the list of drivers who used to drive Todd Brown's car. And Gregor, when he was here, mentioned how many Americans had come over for this meeting. Todd, indeed, is one of them in this car that raced in Valvoline colours in period, as you can see. One guy to definitely watch out for in this race will be Phil Kadori, who won both of them last year at this meeting. Didn't race at our opening round in Barcelona. Obviously a lot of business in Hong Kong. His
dad, the family is the hotel
Yeah, they own lots of stuff in Hong Kong, but they do own the Peninsula Group, and in fact, Simon's just taken over as the CEO. Dad stepped back, so that's got to be a mega. Philip, I mean, sorry, and you know, they own a helicopter company. They own lots of stuff.
You might have the results up there. Actually, I don't remember him necessarily being in a Ferrari last year.
I believe it was, John. Yeah. And I think he possibly started at Bruce knows. He knows more about it than I do. I believe he might have started in Ferrari Challenge. There are a lot of drivers come up to a Ferrari Challenge, don't they?
But they are great weekends if you get the chance to go to one. I was away for a supposedly non-motorsport break with the responsible adults. Was it last year or the year before? They come so unusually, and we stumbled across a Ferrari Challenge weekend, and knowing the guys at Ferrari, they immediately asked us to go there.
Yeah.
It didn't become a non-motorsport weekend.
That BMW was an ex-factory car that raced in America, I think. Definitely an ex-factory car. It still had the Crown Plaza. Remember Crown?
Like Trite Wine. The IHG sponsorship was huge.
Yeah, it was.
Continental Hotel Group. Andy Prio was one of their ambassadors.
Yeah.
Just Stuff did the deal on that across BMW Motor Racing worldwide.
He was one of the ambassadors, but they never built a hotel on Guernsey. I don't think where Andy comes from, of course.
As well.
Yeah, there's three famous names on the side of that car.
That's the Fat Turbo Express car. That livery has been revived lately by both Herbeth Motorsport on a 911 and also on a 963 by the guys at Proton Racing in the States.
In period, I'm never quite sure what Fat Turbo was, but I think it was a trucking company.
It was a transportation company, yeah.
It's nice to see all these old sponsors, many who got great rewards from backing motor racing. You know, not just about the visibility, but also, you know, about business to business.
Another 993.
Well, famous guy, Tim Sugden raced this car at Le Mans.
Steve O'Rourke, the man behind AMI and the manager of Pink Floyd, and a racer of some repute in his own. Did Le Mans several times.
Yeah,
and I think he at least got, without looking at it, I don't know, but I'm certainly got a class podium.
Yeah,
Steve O'Rourke.
I went to a most magnificent party after Goodwood at his house once, and the lead act was Joe Brown. Brown and the Brothers.
Joe Brown and the Brothers,
which was rather fine because I'd seen them about 50 years earlier. And he was just as good. He was still brilliant. And his son was playing keyboards, I remember. This is actually a Schnitzer-built car, of course. And it's now still Schnitzer. Of course, basically, you know more about this than me, John. Schnitzer more or less folded, didn't it? But they have a Schnitzer historic.
Yeah.
And I presume it's run by some of the old mechanics.
Charlie
Lamb, what a brilliant character.
Much missed in the paddock.
They reckon a few of us have done. How many race circuits have we been to? Now you must be. I don't know if you've ever done it, John.
Yes.
I'm well up there because with Marcus Pye I made some loose rules, and you couldn't count little ovals, but you could count big ovals, and a lot. Forget about all the rules. But Charlie Lamb definitely had been to the most race circuits.
I interviewed a chap at Kuwait Town, the first or the second year we were there for Creventic, who'd been to over 1,200.
Really? Yeah.
And he had, there are some fairly stiff rules for the group that he was. You have to go there whilst there is a retail.
We had that. No, our rule was you had to go there when something was happening.
Right.
Cars had to be going round.
Right. Well, race meeting happening. His was. You could count the same track twice if it had, but only twice if it had a significantly different configuration, which had to be, I think, 3 corners and a straight had to be different.
Remember, I'm in Miami, of course, it's a famous racing venue. They had several tracks.
Yeah.
At one place, they moved it on and just used one straight. Well, only one straight was common to both tracks. And because Kyalami, another great track, where one day they might have a Grand Prix, that effectively slipped down the hill.
So Steve O'Rourke won the Class British GT Championship with Tim Sugden in 1997, and then in GT1 in 1998. He went to Le Mans in a McLaren in... Oh, that must have been later than... Well, it might have been about 1998, maybe, yeah. Finished 4th overall with Tim Sugden and Bill Oberlin.
Yes, yeah. Wonderful Bill Oberlin. Still winning in BMW. Extraordinary, man.
Oh, incredible.
That was in that same EMI livery we've just seen.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
He was, of course, instrumental in the Group C Aston Martin sports car in 1985, which Tiffany Dell led the race in and finished well.
Well, John, just look at the murk now. The mists have come down here, not the red mists, but the grey mists.
Yeah.
Although from this shot it looks better behind that Seat.
Yeah, I think that's just that particular view that we have is a little different. Yeah. We are going to start behind the safety car, so the 40 minutes has already started ticking down. It is Emmanuel Collard on pole position in that Porsche 911, the number 123 car, with Francois Perraudot, his longtime driving partner and owner of many lovely cars down at Ricard. GMB run a lot of the cars for him, and that's a GMB 430 Ferrari, I think. Philip Kadori also in a 430 GTC Evo from 2010. 2009, Max Lynn, the same version of the car in the 13. That's your front 2 rows. Then Tim Pappas with the first of the GT2A cars. That is the 993 GT2 Evo from 1999. That's the white car with the black and green stripes. So that's the Black Swan Racing colours. Yannick Trautwein in the E92 BMW from 2010. That's the 250 car that Andrew Marriott was talking about. The USA car run by Schnitzer in the US. And with that IHG, Intercontinental Hotel Group sponsorship, they really activated that well. Curry and Lance Just Stuff put them in the British Touring Car Championship as well. And actually, if you go to Terminal 4 and stay at the Crown.
Come in, John.
No, it wasn't due to. 30 GT3 Ferrari from 2007. Those are the categories. I don't think there's any more classes. No, there aren't. So what we'll see is probably at the end of this lap, if the race director is happy, they will let them go. There's two EMCA Racing or EMI liveried Porsches in this race, actually.
Yep.
Such a great fan of racing, Steve O'Rourke. There was a story about the McLaren. When he ran the McLaren, he'd been given the option to spend what I suspect was not a small amount of money on the upgrade pack. And the car finished 4th without it. He probably politely declined it.
Yeah.
However, in finishing 4th, the rumour was that he spent far more than what he would have spent on the upgrade pack on the party at Le Mans on the Sunday night.
Yes, good story.
Which is so Steve.
Yeah, it was a bit rock and roll. Actually, didn't look rock and roll. Like Nick Mason doesn't look rock and roll. No, you see Nick, particularly these days. But we've had lots of rock and rollers, haven't we, in our times. I remember interviewing Frank Beard from ZZ Top,
who was the only one in the group who didn't have a beard.
Exactly.
which was the irony. That was irony.
And of course, we've got a marvellous Geordie friend who's done a lot of racing in the States.
Brian Johnson.
Brian Johnson, gravel voice.
Racing.
Brian Johnson. A Geordie in an Australian band. I never quite worked it out.
And just lived in the States for probably longer than he lived in the UK. Has a fabulous place and loves his classic racing cars.
Yeah.
And in the early days of us covering what was then the American Le Mans Series, it might have even been as far back as the first year of the series in 1999. There were classic cars at that event in 1999 and 2000. And Brian Johnson was there. And I was asked by Tim Pendergast, another great figure along with his dad in HSR down through the years, to go over to meet Brian Johnson. Well, Brian Johnson, of course, was one of my rock and roll heroes, coming from the same part of the world as I did, and remember him with AC/DC. And so dutifully, and we've had a car off at the kink at the start of the Kemmel Straight, and that is the number 71 car that has stopped. And I'm afraid that car is needing of assistance to get through. That's Rainer Becker in the number 71 Porsche 993. Car needs to, so I was summoned to the HSR tent to meet one of my heroes, and as I walk in, there he is, and he's a little stocky bloke, as you know,
yeah.
Ryan. He still has the most incredible northeast accent, and when he saw Tim and knew that Tim was bringing me in, he shouts over from the side of the room, "Why, aye, kidder, are we over here?" And basically meaning, "Hello, young man, would you like to join me?"
Yes, translation required.
Yeah, and he said, "Why, I'd never thought I'd hear your accent on the PA hour here, mind." I'm terribly surprised to have heard someone from your neck of the woods speaking at motor racing.
Yes.
And great, had a fantastic 45 minutes with them. They say you should never meet your heroes, but I've been very fortunate with people like Brian, a genuine enthusiast.
Yeah, at a Daytona 24 Classic, I did go up to him with the mic in hand, and he said, "I'm not here."
I'm not here, yeah.
And he was racing on another name, of course. And I think it was all in sure. Anyway, he got away with it.
He did a lot for charity in the recent past.
Highway to
Health.
Yeah, because the great album was Highway to Hell. Yeah. And
He still races.
Yeah, Dave Hinton was all involved.
Well, massively instrumental in the classic racing scene in the US. David Hinton.
Yeah,
still around.
David was at Barcelona.
Yeah,
but not here, and because he's still got his preparation company, although he's not involved in the organisation.
I bump into David infrequently, but every time I can, I sit down and have a chat with him.
Yeah.
David, if you're watching and listening, hope you're well. And those of you in the States, it's just after 7.
Well, depending where you are.
Well, 6 a.m. I suppose on the East Coast at the moment, -6 from Central European. There might be 1 or 2 people joining us there on the YouTube live channel for Peter Auto. We'll have all of the events there. And again, a very special welcome to those watching on the Goodwood channel.
Now,
for the first time.
Going to be very interesting to see if Maxwell Lynn can make it 4 out of 4.
This safety car is not coming in this lap.
No.
And next lap,
I think
will be very close to the pit window opening. Now, that might throw a bit of confusion in here, depending on who comes into the pits and who does not.
Yeah. I think obviously, Stephen Edwards and Matt Neal are sharing a car. So, Matt's still quick, so they might make a change. And of course, Tim Pappas has got Jeroen Bleekemolen with him. So that could be interesting. But, I'm so impressed with Max Lynn's progress as a racing driver. And
I was asking Sean whether some contemporary racing might be on the cards, and indeed it is, and he has done some.
They've done LMP3, I believe, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But of course, say contemporary. He's raced a Bentley that won at Le Mans. It's 20 years ago. You know, got all the whistles and bells as that car.
Well, and I think
won it.
That car still looks fresh.
Yeah.
Now, the Taizan Porsche in the pit lane is the number 72 car.
That's a car that raced at Le Mans, I'm pretty sure, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the Ivo van Riet's car, the GT3 RS from 2001 with some rhinoplasty on that. Had a little bit of a nose job.
Kyle Tilley is supposed to be in this race.
Yes.
Yeah, he didn't practice the car, obviously.
He was given dispensation to come and drive.
But
He has a couple of drives here today with the ERA cars. Now, is he in this one?
Well, he was on the entry originally.
Okay.
I think in the car he was racing at Donington recently. He had been in a Hong Kong car park for 8 years when he discovered it.
You're just joining us. The Endurance Racing Legends 2 race has been slightly curtailed at the moment as we have to start behind the safety car.
Yeah, Rainer Becker looped it, had to have his car put on a flatbed. It's been trundled back to the paddock now, fortunately. They should be up and running. But Bruce, you've just been out there, pretty wet, I guess.
Stopped raining.
It's not raining now.
Has it?
It's waiting rather a long time for the drivers to be brought to the podium because the previous lot, because it was wet, were told to go straight back to that middle paddock and then had to paddle down the hill. And I thought this is going to be absolutely foul because it was flinging it down. By the time we got them out there, it had stopped raining. A huge amount of spray around the surface because it had about 10-15 minutes of proper heavy rain. Yesterday we had some heavy rain, but largely it was just drizzle. But right now, at certain points of the circuit, it's still clearly falling.
But Bruce, that's here at the pits. This is Spa.
Well, the safety car's coming in this lap. I've done some checking for you. The 993 GT2, number 66, that Kyle Tilley was meant to be racing, is not out there.
No.
At the moment.
Maybe we'll pop down at lunchtime, see the ERA boys, see if Kyle made it from the Creventic race.
Finished on the podium in category yesterday with Ryan DL, among others. So, Emmanuel Collard, with the pits opening in 60 seconds, I don't know what you do here, because there's every opportunity for somebody to make a mistake and cause a full course yellow. So do you do one lap and then pit immediately? Or do you push on and get yourself as much ground as you can, just in case there's an incident? I suppose you've got to think that the race Bruce Jones will go. You can never bet on a safety car coming out.
You can't, and also you can just, when there is the question of pitting, you can just ping it wrong by a few seconds. But our front runners are clearly not looking to go in. Emmanuel Collard comes around the corner and presses off up towards the last source. But yeah, you can just fall the wrong side of the coin.
Never follow the safety car in anyway.
No,
so
precisely.
That's normally a regulation. So we are on our first racing lap, albeit with just 25 of the 45 minutes that we started with on the clock remaining.
What's happened to Max Lynn?
Maxwell Lynn. Now, did he pit? Yes, he did.
Yeah.
So there was just enough room that he wasn't held up by the safety car coming into the pit lane. So he is going to jump out and presumably pass the car over to his dad. Sean Lynn's listed against that car.
I doubt if he will. He hasn't in the previous races. He didn't.
Right.
He didn't yesterday, and he didn't at Barcelona. But you can never be sure.
I'll keep an eye on that. Yeah. It's a mandatory time pit stop, of course. Side-by-side action. Ferrari on Ferrari, the two prancing horses coming down to the braking area for Lecombe. And the one with slightly more red on it. Francois Perraudot prevails over Philippe Cadori.
Has Max Lynn been really clever, coming and now giving himself an empty track?
Well, yes, is the answer.
I think
he himself an empty track, so he won't be scrapping with anybody, and he'll have the only person who has a better view than him is Emmanuel Collard, who's at the front of the field. But presumably, Emmanuel will come in fairly shortly. With it being a 45-minute race, it's only a 15-minute window. So Collard ahead, and then the battle of the Ferraris. The one with the white on is Francois Perraudot, Philippe Cadori in the Modena racing car. Slightly lighter red. And then the two Porsche 993s having a scrap. And that is the scrap for the GT2A podium top step with Tim Pappas and Seb Glazer side by side there. Pappas, in fact, having just given up the lead to the GT silver car with the yellow stripes.
Collard, absolutely amazing. He's been racing for 30 years. He was quick in Formula 3000. He's in a Porsche here. He's one of the first Porsche junior drivers.
Yeah.
25 Le Mans he's competed in. Most recently, I think just a couple of years ago, for Penske, when they had that initial campaign before they moved in.
Yeah, they're on a P2 car.
Yeah, they did, and he was driving that, and not only in Le Mans, but in America.
Matt Neal in the pit lane in the 27 Porsche. Jochen Ruhr has also come in the 162. These are all Porsches. Henrique Giamperle in the number 12 car. Max Lynn we knew about in the Ferrari. That's the ex-Andrea Coccoli car, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Sarah Bove's in this race.
Yeah. Ivo von Riet as well in the pit lane.
Yeah.
Just had a change for third place. Philippe Cadori made a bit of a deep entry into the bus stop, and by the time he got his Ferrari not pointing the right way, it always was, but he lost all momentum. And Sebastian Glazer nipped through to put his Porsche, his 993, the silver one that had just moved ahead of Tim Pappas, up into third overall. So that was a good move, but I'm sure Philippe will atone for that and get going.
And that's bad news for Tim, because he's now got that Ferrari between himself and the car that leads his class.
Yeah, I think Philippe's a little bit faster. He just simply made a mistake, and it probably cost him about 2 or 3 seconds at the bus stop. When you're just going in, trying to, you have to turn about 110 degrees to the right for the first part of it, but he couldn't do that.
Scooter Gable is leading the GT2B category in the E36 BMW GT from 2000. A second in that is Dennis Busch in another Porsche GT3 RS from 2003. That's the 996, so that is the car with the sort of fried egg shaped headlights on that car. Emmanuel Collard with a 7-second lead over Francois Perraudot, who's got his mirrors full of Sebastian Glazer. Will Manu pull into the pits this time around? Glazer then right with Francois Perraudot at the moment. Further down the field, Charles Scardina Jr. with Dennis Busch on his tail. Porsche versus Ferrari there. They're in different classes, but Dennis is moving up through the field, clearly emboldened by his performance in the last race, where he was superb in the 935, his last race. Now in the 996 with similar performance. Down into Pouhon for the next race. Good afternoon to Charlie Hyatt.
Hi guys, how's it going?
I'm very well. Ready to race.
I'm very wet. We've just been out in the CER2 and
won your class.
We came second in class.
Right, okay.
Yes, almost. We got done by a full course yellow and the wrong pit stop time. But it was great race.
And how wet was wet out there? It looked. It started kind of okay, but we saw a gradual deterioration, and it was only when we saw the race highlights and saw what it looked like at the start to what would just be looking like. Good heavens, that did get quite bad.
It was certainly something. I mean, if you can look at my race suit now, you could wring it and it would drip water onto the floor.
But still enjoyable?
Fantastic, yes, absolutely fantastic.
This is the challenge that drivers like, a challenging circuit, challenging conditions, cars that have no driver aids.
Exactly, yes, it's completely raw, no ABS, no traction control, just completely raw racing, which is absolutely fantastic, and honestly, so much fun. I absolutely love it.
Just dive in, because Maxwell Lynn, who we thought would make his 4th win in a row, is out of the race. He has stayed in the pit, so I don't know what happened to the ex-Coccoli Ferrari, but it ain't going. Collard pulled away 8 seconds, showing his class all those years, racing for top teams like Toyota in the past. So many.
Seb Glazer has gone through into second and leads his class.
Yeah.
Francois Perraudot in second in his class, ahead of the other Ferrari, Philippe Cadori, in 4th position. We'll keep an eye on that. Into the pit lane for the BMW. That's the XPTG American car in period. That would have run on Yokohama tyres when there was still a tyre battle in the sort of fledgling ELMS in the late 1990s, early 2000s. What brings you to this racing? Tell me why, young Mr. Hyatt, that you are here enjoying this.
Pure passion, but ultimately we're doing it as a family. So I'm racing with my father, I'm racing with my brother. We're here with 4 cars this weekend. So some cars we're sharing. So I just, in the CER2 race, I shared with my father. It's just fantastic memories for us. I don't think many drivers have the privilege to do it, and so we're making the most of it while we can.
Do the cars have a family heritage, or have you acquired them to come and do this?
The cars don't have a family heritage. We're building a heritage.
Very good.
Charlie, in Barcelona, you had a very good run. I think you had a problem right near the end, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. We took the gamble and went on dry tyres and gambled and waited for the dry line.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we were having a bit of an issue with the drive shafts. And unfortunately, we succumbed to the drive shaft difficulties in the race, which is a big shame. But
because you're right up there with a podium.
Yes, yeah. I think coming into the pit stops, I had quite a good lead.
Yeah.
Just purely because the tyre strategy was fantastic, which is down to my team manager Trevor Foster.
Trevor's. Right, Trev's running the car.
Right.
Yeah, because I see you've got the Pegasus hat on, and that's Trevor's new company. Yes.
Exactly.
Been an incident out there between Ivo van Vliet, who's in the pits now, in the 72 Ferrari, and the number 71 car, which has been looked at by the race stewards. That's the Rainer Becker Porsche. That must have been quite early on. Charlie Hyatt with us in the Global Broadcast Centre.
Perodo. Yeah, Perodo in.
In the top 5 all in to the pit lane to make their mandatory pit stops, because we've only got 100 seconds left, so they could not have done another lap. Charlie, you mentioned getting caught out by the yellows. This is such a long lap that when you go to full course yellow, if you don't have to be cutting it that fine to miss the pit stop window.
Yes, it's one of those where we don't have pit to car radio, so if you see a yellow and if the pit window's open, you've got to be a judge. Yeah, you've just got to go.
How do you decide? Because there's no pits to car, nobody can say, all right, you can come in now. So you have a timer on the dashboard or on the steering wheel, and you've made that decision before the race starts that you're going to do 28 minutes of the race or whatever?
So it's one of those where we know the pit window is 25 minutes to 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Every time we come around, the boys are putting out the pit board saying how long is left, and some people also have a countdown timer from the start of the race in the car. So as a driver, you kind of have a feel for how long is left. You know how long the lap is. So, for example, if you're coming around and it says 37 minutes left, especially in the wet, it's going to be, above a 2-minute lap. So if you're coming round and the full course yellow comes out, you're straight in the pit.
Straight in the pit. Yeah. The problem is if you've just gone by the pit lane entrance and you're heading,
the worst feeling.
And you're going down through that sort of, excellent, another lap. I get my head together for Eau Rouge and full course yellow. And it's like.
But look, it swings and roundabouts, and in other races we've got lucky with it. It's just one of those things,
It's a championship now with these races spread throughout the year, going to fantastic circuits. You're with us at Barcelona. Are you coming back for Dijon?
Yes, hopefully we're doing the full season. So we've got Dijon in 2 weeks, Le Mans Classic, which everybody's very excited for, Imola, Paul Ricard, and then we finish in Estoril, I believe.
Yeah, Estoril, that'd be a good party.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dad must have raced in Le Mans 24 main race, didn't he?
He did. He did it in 1989 in a Spice SE88C, and he did it in 1990, and he's going to kill me. It was a Tiger something.
Yeah.
And second and third in class.
Yeah.
In the respective years.
So no pressure for you and your brother. Nothing to live up to whatsoever.
Yeah.
We're very lucky to go back and compete in. That's his thing, Le Mans, and it's amazing for us to get to drive with him, share the drive, do it as a family, and hopefully, if we can place well, it adds a cherry on top.
Yeah, the Le Mans Classic not part of the championship, but which of the cars are you taking to Le Mans Classic?
So we're taking the B19, which you guys have seen racing. So that's the ex-Jody Scheckter B19.
Yeah.
We've got the Lola T70, which we're taking, so that both in Plateau 5.
Yeah.
In Plateau 6, we've got a B31.
Oh, lovely.
Which is what we've just been racing.
Yeah.
Great fun. And then...
and there's a coming together of that battle on the outlap, I believe, between Perodo coming out of the pits and Philip Kadori. And, well, that will be looked at. That was at Le Combe. And even with a very wet track, we heard the racing tyres screeching there as they were hard on the brakes. Olivier Piquet, by the way, leads the race now, but is yet to stop in the 993 GT2 Evo. So they were side by side into the braking area for Le Combe. Kadori down the inside and just couldn't get the car stopped.
Synchronised spinning, wasn't it, there?
Yeah, not too much damage.
Do you think they...
I don't think.
Do you think they touched?
Yeah, they did touch.
Did they? Yeah,
yes, there was a definite thud. How difficult is it to get your braking point in these conditions at the end of that run up the Kemmel Straight? Because it is uphill there to Le Combe.
Yeah, it's one of those where you kind of have in your head, okay, I know I'm going to brake here, but obviously in the heat of battle, somehow the strategy goes out the window a little bit.
Sorry, we interrupted you on the cars to Le Mans. So
we had the B13 in Plateau 6, B31 rather in Plateau 6, and then we've also got the BMW 3-litre CSL Batmobile in Plateau 6 as well, which I absolutely love.
And much needle between you and your brother and your father on who's the quickest. I think you're probably the quickest, Charlie, aren't you?
Well, we're all about the same kind of. It's great.
Very diplomatic.
It's great. I mean, we did a 24-hour race a few years ago at Paul Ricard. It was the Vie de Vie 24.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And me, my father, myself, and my brother, we all took part, and similar lap times all the way through, and we won overall by about 7 laps in the end. Which was,
consistency wins endurance.
Exactly.
It really does.
If there's anyone to follow by in terms of experience, we've got Trevor as the team manager, as I mentioned, and my father. So.
How did you and your brother get into racing then? Was it always going to be the fact that you would follow your dad? And did you come up through karting? How did it work?
So I always wanted to race. I absolutely love it. It's one of those where obviously budget's a big thing, and obviously, if you can't get the budget, you can't race.
Side by side again with the Ferraris going down. We'll let Charlie finish his story in just a minute. As Kadori on the pit lane wall side has eased ahead and will just take an advantage into Eau Rouge. There's traffic ahead. It's one of the 996s just going over the brow, but that was nicely completed, and a bit of respect after that little coming together at Le Combe. I promise you there is a Porsche and 2 Ferraris.
Somewhere.
2 Porsches and 2 Ferraris coming through that spray. It really does hang in parts of the circuit here, Charlie, doesn't it?
For sure. And these cars here, they have got good levels of downforce, and as a result of that, they kick up a significant amount of spray.
Yeah.
Which trying to follow in something like that, especially when you've got a windscreen, not even just a visor, is dangerous at times.
So going back to you and your brother getting started.
Yeah, so we got into it. Dad, as an ex-professional, he then started doing the classics, and it was a great way for the family to get together as we all came and watched. And obviously I'm on the sidelines itching to get in the car. and we set up Pegasus with Trevor. And from there we slowly, gradually got into it. Started in Sports 2000, which is a fantastic series.
Very good.
And then we went straight to CER1. So
okay.
It's been a really cool couple of years.
Do you look at contemporary racing and go, yeah, I'd quite like to have a go at that?
Oh yeah, I'd absolutely love to have a go, but again, budget is the underlying factor which all us drivers suffer from, but also privilege from when it goes right. I'm hopefully going to try get some budget for next year to do something. Working in the background at the moment to figure it out.
Single-seaters, sports cars?
It'll be sports cars, yeah. I mean, my dream, my long-term dream, I guess, like everyone, is to go race at Le Mans like my father did.
Yeah.
Be the second generation to do it.
Excellent. So Carrera Cup or something like that would be a good first step?
Maybe Carrera Cup, maybe go do something in Europe.
Okay.
I'm being coy, so I can't play my cards yet.
Okay, well that's it. Let us know when you can.
I'm teasing you.
Yeah. Have you got anything else to do? Are you back out later? Yes.
I've got the B19.
I've got the B19. Of course you have. Yeah.
So we after the shuffle of a few penalties in here and there, we're second overall on the grid. I don't know what the weather's going to be like. at all. But we've got, you know, with the B31 which we're routing, we're either on full slicks or we're on slicks or we're on full wets.
Yeah.
So we don't have an intermediate. Whereas the B19, they runs on the treaded tyres.
Yeah.
We don't have slicks. We do have wets, but the treaded tyres are like an inter to wet anyway. So these conditions are not too bad for it. And obviously, as a lighter car, it goes around the corners better than the big brutes like the T70. So the favourable conditions for me is it would be wet around here.
And when you start that race?
Yeah, I'm doing that by myself.
Oh, you did by yourself? Okay.
Yeah. My father and my brother, they're sharing the T70.
Right. Okay, so the big brute is up against your dad and your brother, and in the big brute is up against you, the little nimble B19.
David and Goliath.
I like it. And what, losers by dinner tonight? Is that the...
I think we'll just try and get to the Euros tonight.
I think Olivier Piquet has not come in.
Piquet
is just
has not stopped.
Window shut.
Right. I don't show him.
He's going for the glory, look. It just reminds me that 3 years ago, you might not know this, 3 years ago at the Le Mans Classic, Nelson Piquet turned up and raced in a Porsche.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. With some Brazilian friends, totally unannounced.
That's cool.
And I don't think the organisers picked it up. So there, suddenly he was there. Yeah. I reported Formula 1 for a long time, knew him well, so I had a marvellous interview. And it was when he was in that controversy about using a word that the BRDC threw him out, although there was a lot of controversy about how that word is actually, I won't go into it, but it wasn't as bad as a lot of people thought it was.
Pit stops under investigation for Olivier Piquet in the lead, number 103, along with a slew of other cars who I think have missed the window.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to see which of the cars are in prime positions. Robert Offley definitely in the 111. Also the 265 car, that's not one of the leading cars in class, so that will be a penalty for Wolf Zweifler in his Porsche. How did you pick the cars? The family cars then? Sat down on after Sunday lunch and sort of browsed through the classic racing car sites, or did it have to have some kind of connection with your dad when he was racing?
So how it started with the few cars, I think my dad raced a T17 period, and that's his favourite car, and so that was okay, fun. Tick that box.
All right, that one was easy.
Yeah, that was easy. The others you look at, for us, we look at
and that's the Brumos Raw 162 car in the hands of John Hindhaugh, 1995.
Full course yellow, John, do you think?
I think so, yeah. 20 seconds coming in. And that is a shame, because that car was going quite well for Tom. That's a 1997 993 GT2. I really like the 993 GT2, albeit it looked like it had bolt-on arches that you'd picked up down at an accessory shop, but that was the fashion in those days. But looked pretty good, and that car gets swept up fairly quickly. So sorry, tell me about the other cars.
Yeah, so as I said, the way we picked them is somewhat unconventional perhaps. So what we look at is what we might want to do in terms of racing series, events, that kind of stuff, and then look at going, okay, well, what's going to be the most competitive car? Budget, obviously, as it always comes down to, is a thing as well. And then also whether you can find them, because these cars from the 60s, 70s, 80s, there wasn't always that many that were made.
Yes.
I'm not too clued up on the history of each individual era of car, but there could be down to 3 cars ever made in period and 1 left, which obviously is going to be very expensive. But effectively, what's the best bang for buck, and whether you can find them, whether there's one that's reasonably priced, etc., etc.
And with Pegasus, then, giving you the opportunity to prep the cars for yourselves, and has that expanded into doing work for other customers?
Not yet. I mean, it's something I'd love to do. Work with other customers, other teams, other drivers. Obviously, the more you race, the more experience you get, the better you get, and hopefully you can pass that on to somebody else at some point. I learn a lot from my father and Trevor. Obviously, they're such experienced guys and stuff. Just listen.
Yeah.
Listen, ask questions and go, okay, what does this mean? What does this do? When we started, I didn't.
And the problem is, I've got a feeling, I bet if you get your dad and Trevor together and start asking about something, it'll start off about the engineering of the car, and then they'll go, oh, and do you remember Dave so-and-so? He went off on that and they did that thing, and do you remember he came back with the most extraordinary one? And they'll go off on to telling stories.
It's almost like you've been in the room with us.
It's tangential thinking. It happens when you get to a certain... But something will pop into your head, and if you don't say it immediately, it'll disappear again. And so the stories will come out. But it's great because you're almost by a process of osmosis taking all that history in.
Yeah, so you just sit there and effectively just be a sponge.
Yeah.
Just listen, and because the stories are fantastic. And Trevor's been doing it since 18.
Yeah.
And, he's been in motorsport for 50 years.
And the people he's worked with, it's like a who's who.
Yeah, exactly. When he worked with Schumacher at Jordan, ran Jordan for a long time, then he was Autosport Zytec. I'm sure the list goes on. I've probably missed out a few things there, but
you and I could sit here all the way through the lunch break and talk about things Trevor Foster did and drivers Trevor Foster worked with. When you were growing up, were you aware of what your dad had been doing? Were you around to see his the first part of his career?
No, I was born in '98, and I believe he stopped professionally in '99.
Yeah.
That time.
Yeah.
And then he started, I think, late 2000s, coming back doing the classics. So I was a young boy going around, loved the cars, I loved it, and it was just amazing to be a part of it. And obviously now we're driving it and doing it. It's like, wow, yeah, dream come true.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see you throughout the rest of the season. Tell me a little bit about the atmosphere. As actually we've gone back to green flag. I'll come back to you in a second. Because Philip Cadore is now leading, so that Ferrari battle is for the front of the field. I can't believe this, but Emmanuel Collard, for the third race in 2 days, has been done over by the appearance of a full course yellow. Philip Cadore and Francois Perraudot have been asked to go to the steward's office at the end of the race. I suspect that was for the coming together at Les Combes that saw both of those cars spinning, and yet they are still battling for the lead. This is the last lap, and Charlie Hyatt with me. Contact, however it occurs, Charlie, is very much frowned upon in this series.
Yes, it's not advised, but obviously you're racing in very powerful, very fast cars. Some
difficult conditions.
Very difficult conditions. Yes, I don't think anything's really intentional.
No,
just racing. Also the other factor is the visibility is always fantastic in the car either. Yeah. Your awareness has to be really on its toes. Is someone in the gravel there?
Yeah, that was the 18 Porsche, I think, the white car, if memory serves. Yes, it was the Frederic Laurent and David Cuff car. Sadly, off to the side of the road, coming down the hill. Well, this has been a race-long battle between Philippe Cadore and Francois Perraudot. I'm leaving out Olivier Piquet at the moment because he's going to get a one-lap penalty. In fact, Seb Glazer has already gone past him as well. So it's actually Seb Glazer who's leading overall. It's the two Ferraris battling for the GT2C category. Ollie Piquet in second place. And where's Seb Glazer then in the 22 car?
Not Ollie Piquet coming into the pits.
Yes, he is. He's come into the pit lane. Seb Glazer's gone through to win the race in the number 22, as Piquet in that bright orange car has gone through. Sebastian Glazer in the GT Silver with the yellow stripes on the side. In the battle of the Ferraris, Cadore ahead of Francois Perraudot. There's the leader on his slowed down lap in the Veith Racing car. Another lovely 993. giving the marshals a wave there. Emmanuel Collard, again, having led the race, down in third in GT2C ahead of Paul McLean. Jeroen Blekemolen not really given the chance to pull the Black Swan 540 any further up the field. Erwin France wins the Invitational in the 458 Italia from Guy Ford in second place. Mark Sumter, by the way, has brought the 36 MK car, the Porsche, third in the GT2A category in fifth position. Charlie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Go well this afternoon, and come and see the boys at Dijon, and we'll catch up again when I'm back in the booth at Le Mans Classic.
That's great. We'll see you soon.
There'll be a lot of people very envious of you, but I know how much work goes on behind the scenes with the team at Pegasus. And thank you, your dad, your brother, and Trevor for bringing these lovely cars out, and more to the point, for taking those lovely cars and doing with them what they were designed to do. I think it honours the people who designed, built them and ran them in period. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed for the entertainment.
Thank you.
Have a good lunchtime. We'll see you this afternoon. Charlie Hyatt with us in the Global Broadcast Centre as we wrap up the morning session here at Spa-Francorchamps. Plenty of time penalties coming through as well for Robert Offley with a time penalty. He's going to get almost 2 minutes, as well as Wolf Zweifler. So Seb Glazer winning overall and in class from Philip Kadori, also a class winner. Francois Perraudot now scored in third. But those drivers having to go to see the stewards after they came together at Les Combes. Missed pit stop for the PK car, which has dropped a lap out and in fact came into the pits at the end. Other class winners, Erwin France and Scooter Gable in the 13th position in the PTG BMW. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back this afternoon at 13:35 for the historic touring cars. Join us for the moment from the morning session. I'm John Hindhaugh. Bye for now.